Hello guys, welcome to Fiction Quest. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto awakened power of the vampire progenitor and fell in love with Krul Tepes from Seraph of the End? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. Crimson Awakening. The ancient stone walls of the abandoned Uzumaki temple stood silent under the pale moonlight, their weathered surfaces covered in moss and intricate sea-ling patterns that hadn't been activated in centuries. Naruto Uzumaki's breath came in controlled bursts as he crouched behind a fallen column, his black and orange jacket collecting dust from the ruins. His blue eyes narrowed, tracking the movements of the hooded figure darting between the temple's broken archways. "You're not getting away this time," he whispered, feeling Kurama's chakra simmer beneath his skin. Ready to be called upon. 3 days of pursuit had led him to this forgotten place in the land of whirlpools, a chase that began when reports reached Konoha of someone stealing forbidden scrolls and artifacts from hidden archives across the 5 great nations. The thief's trail had been deliberately misleading, but Naruto recognized the pattern in the targets, all related to space, time manipulation and dimensional theory. The cloaked figure paused at the temple's central altar, placing stolen scrolls in a precise arrangement around a crystalline object that pulsed with an eerie violet light. Naruto tensed, recognizing his moment. Shadow clone jutsu. A dozen clones materialized around the temple, blocking all escape routes. The figure's head snapped up, revealing nothing but darkness beneath the hood. "It's over," Naruto called out, stepping from his hiding place. "Whatever you're planning stops now." The figure laughed, a sound like cracking ice. "Naruto Uzumaki, right on schedule." Something in that voice sent a chill down Naruto's spine. "Who are you? What do you want with these artifacts?" "Want?" The figure's hands moved in unfamiliar patterns. "I want to break the boundaries that separate realities. There are worlds beyond your comprehension, Uzumaki, worlds where power flows like rivers, waiting to be claimed." The crystal on the altar began to rotate, its light intensifying until it painted the temple walls with shifting patterns. Naruto felt the air grow heavy, like the moment before a lightning strike. "Step away from the altar," Naruto commanded, summoning a Rasengan that illuminated his determined face with blue light. "Last warning. You misunderstand. This isn't a confrontation." The figure continued the strange hand movements. "It's an invitation." The crystal spun faster, emitting a high-pitched whine. Naruto lunged forward, but the figure completed the sequence of hand seals. The temple floor beneath the altar fractured, revealing glowing Uzumaki sealing patterns that hadn't been visible before. Dimensional breach. Awakening. The crystal shattered, each fragment suspended in midair as reality itself seemed to crack around them. Naruto pushed chakra to his feet, accelerating toward the figure, Rasengan extended. The blue spiraling sphere connected with the figure's chest just as space began to distort. Too late, the figure wheezed as they tumbled backward. "The bridge is forming. 2 worlds, connected through you." Naruto gripped the front of the figure's cloak. "What did you do?" The hood fell back, revealing a face that made Naruto's blood run cold. Pale skin stretched over sharp features, with eyes like silver coins and strange markings that resembled the Otsutsuki clans, but corrupted somehow. "You carry the 9 tails. The strongest of the tailed beasts. Your chakra is the perfect conduit." Blood trickled from the figure's mouth as the Rasengan's damage spread. "Your lineage, your power, makes you the ideal bridge." The distortion in the air expanded, becoming a swirling vortex that pulled at everything around it. Naruto's clones dissipated one by one as they were dragged into the rift. He channeled Kurama's chakra, golden energy flaring around him as he fought against the pull. "Kit, something's wrong with this jutsu, ****. Kurama's voice resonated within him. "This isn't normal space-time manipulation." "What is it then?" Naruto gritted his teeth, chakra arms extending to anchor himself to the temple columns. "It's tearing at the fabric between dimensions. Not like Kagaya's ability. This is cruder, more destructive." The dying figure smiled through bloodied teeth. "The first crossing is always violent. You'll thank me when you understand what waits on the other side." A massive surge of energy erupted from the vortex. Naruto felt his chakra arms snap as the pull intensified. His body lifted from the ground, and pain lanced through him as the vortex's energy collided with Kurama's chakra. Kurama, hold on. I'm trying to. The temple collapsed inward as the vortex expanded one final time. Naruto felt his body being torn apart and reassembled in the same moment, every cell screaming in agony. The last thing he saw was the figure's satisfied smile before darkness claimed him. Consciousness returned in fragments. Pain first. Deep, pervasive pain that suggested severe chakra depletion and physical trauma. Then sound. Distant rumbling, metal creaking, wind whistling through empty spaces. Finally, touch. Cold concrete beneath his battered body, the taste of blood in his mouth. Naruto forced his eyes open, blinking against bright sunlight filtering through what appeared to be the skeletal remains of a massive building unlike any architecture he'd seen before. Twisted metal beams jutted from crumbling concrete walls, and strange artifacts, vehicles of some kind, lay rusted and abandoned in what might have once been a street. Where? He managed to whisper, his voice hoarse. Somewhere we shouldn't be. Kurama answered, his normally powerful voice weakened. That jutsu, it sent us between worlds. Naruto tried to sit up and immediately regretted it as pain shot through his abdomen. Looking down, he saw a jagged piece of metal protruding from his side. He must have landed on debris. Blood soaked his torn jacket. That's not good, he muttered. Assessing the wound, it would heal with Kurama's help, but not instantly, and he was dangerously low on chakra. Kit, we need to find shelter. I sense strange energies in this world. Different from chakra. Naruto nodded, gritting his teeth as he carefully removed the metal shard. Fresh blood flowed, but he pressed his hand against the wound and channeled what little chakra he could spare to begin the healing process. With painful effort, he dragged himself to his feet and took in his surroundings more fully. The devastation extended in every direction, a city in ruins, overtaken by nature. Massive buildings, taller than any in Konoha, stood as hollow shells. Signs with unfamiliar writing hung at odd angles. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional collapse of debris in the distance. What happened here? Naruto wondered aloud, limping toward what appeared to be a more intact structure. A war, perhaps, or some catastrophe, but recently, within a decade by the look of the decay. Naruto nodded, making slow progress through the ruined street. His senses remained alert despite his weakened state, years of shinobi training keeping him vigilant. That vigilance saved his life when a flash of movement caught his peripheral vision. He dropped instinctively, a blade slicing through the air where his neck had been moments before. Rolling to his feet despite the protest from his wound, Naruto faced his attacker, and froze in confusion. The creature before him looked human but moved with unnatural speed. Pale skin, crimson eyes, and viscous fangs marked it as something else entirely. It wore what seemed to be a uniform of sorts, blood red and black with gold trim. A human survivor, it hissed, eyes fixed on the blood-soaking Naruto's side. And wounded at that. How fortunate. Naruto slipped into a defensive stance. I don't know what you are, but I'm not looking for trouble. The creature laughed, a cold sound devoid of humor. Trouble found you the moment you entered our territory, livestock. It attacked again, moving faster than an ordinary human could track. But Naruto wasn't ordinary. Even injured and chakra depleted, his reflexes were exceptional. He sidestepped, gathering chakra for a counterattack. Shadow clone. He began, but his chakra faltered mid-jutsu, the pain from his wound intensifying. Only 2 clones materialized, looking as battered as he was. The creature paused, eyes widening slightly. What manner of cursed gear is that? Naruto didn't waste breath answering. His clones charged while he struggled to form a Rasengan. The creature dispatched the first clone with alarming ease, its blade cutting through the construct as if it were tissue paper. The second clone lasted longer, landing a solid punch before being destroyed. The creature staggered back, touching its face where the clone had struck. You're stronger than you look, human. Your blood will be exquisite. Naruto's partially formed Rasengan flickered and died as his chakra reserves hit critical levels. His vision blurred, the wound in his side throbbing with each heartbeat. He cursed under his breath. He'd faced worse odds before, but rarely in such a weakened state in completely unfamiliar territory. The creature sensed his vulnerability and lunged, blade extended. Naruto prepared to dodge, knowing he'd have only one chance to. Oh, counter. A blur of motion intercepted the attack. The creature's expression shifted from predatory confidence to shock as its blade arm separated from its body, blood spraying across the rubble. Ending between Naruto and his attacker was a small figure with flowing pink hair, dressed in an elaborate black dress with white frills. Progenitor Tepes. The creature gasped, dropping to one knee despite its injury. Forgive me, I didn't realize this human was under your protection. The newcomer, a girl who appeared no older than 13 but carried herself with ancient authority, turned slightly, revealing crimson eyes similar to the creature's but deeper, more intense. She glanced at Naruto with mild curiosity before addressing the kneeling vampire. This human is not under my protection, Lacus, she said, her voice carrying an imperious tone that belied her youthful appearance. But neither is he yours to feed upon without permission. Return to Sanguinum and have your wound treated. Yes, my queen. The creature, Lacus, retreated, clutching the stump of his severed arm. The pink-haired girl turned fully toward Naruto, who remained in his defensive stance despite the growing weakness in his limbs. Her eyes narrowed as she studied him. You're not from this world, she stated with absolute certainty. Naruto tensed. How could you know that? Your energy is different. Vibrant in a way I haven't felt in centuries. She approached slowly, seemingly untroubled by the possibility he might attack. What are you called? Naruto Uzumaki, he answered, deciding that hostility would be counterproductive given his condition. And you? I am Krul Tepes, third progenitor and queen of the vampires of Japan. She stopped a few paces away, head tilted slightly as she examined him more closely. You're dying, Naruto Uzumaki. He managed a pained smile. I've been told that before. I heal fast. Not fast enough, I think. Her eyes fixed on his wound, which continued to bleed despite his efforts. Whatever energy you typically use for healing is nearly depleted. I can sense it fading. She's right, Kit, Kurama's voice sounded fainter than before. My chakra is being suppressed by something in this world. The dimensional crossing damaged our connection. I can't heal you properly. Naruto swayed slightly, struggling to maintain his footing. Well, that's inconvenient. Krul stepped closer, her movement causing no sound against the debris-strewn ground. You interest me, stranger. I've lived for centuries and never encountered energy like yours. It would be a waste to let it extinguish. What are you suggesting? Naruto asked warily, vision beginning to tunnel. I could save you, she said simply. But there would be a price. Before Naruto could respond, his senses, dulled by pain and chakra depletion, registered multiple presences surrounding them. A dozen figures in black uniforms emerged from the ruins, carrying weapons that hummed with strange energy. Vampire Queen Krul Tepes called out a man at the front, his voice amplified by the device in his hand. You're surrounded by the Japanese Imperial Demon Army's Moon Demon Company. Surrender or be destroyed. Krul's expression didn't change, but Naruto detected a slight tensing of her small frame. How tiresome, she murmured. The livestock has grown bolder in recent months. Despite his condition, Naruto assessed the newcomers quickly. They were human, unlike Lacus, but carried weapons that radiated strange power. They moved with military precision, establishing a perimeter around Krul and himself. Are these friends of yours? He asked weakly. Krul's lips curved in a cold smile. Quite the opposite. The humans of this world wage a futile war against vampires. The Moon Demon Company represents their elite soldiers. The leader of the group stepped forward, wielding a black blade that pulsed with green energy. Step away from the civilian, vampire. Naruto almost laughed at being called a civilian. Even at his weakest, he was far from helpless. But the situation was deteriorating rapidly, caught between unknown factions in an unfamiliar world, with his chakra nearly depleted. And a serious wound sapping his strength. I can handle myself, he told Krul, straightening despite the pain. You should go. Her crimson eyes widened slightly in surprise. You would protect me. Interesting. But unnecessary. In a flash too quick for human eyes to track, Krul moved. 3 of the soldiers fell before they could react, their weapons clattering to the ground. The others responded with coordinated attacks. their cursed weapons leaving trails of energy as they sliced through the air. Naruto, refusing to stand idle despite his condition, summoned the last dregs of his chakra. He couldn't form complex jutsu, but basic taijutsu remained an option. When one of the soldiers circled behind Krul, Naruto intercepted, blocking a downward strike with his forearm and countering with a palm strike that sent the man flying into a concrete pillar. The effort cost him dearly. Pain exploded from his wound, and darkness edged his vision. He staggered, dropping to one knee. Foolish, Krul commented, appearing beside him after dispatching 2 more soldiers. But admirable. I don't like unfair fights, Naruto managed through gritted teeth. The remaining soldiers regrouped, weapons at the ready. Their leader assessed the situation and made a decision. Deploy the Seraph serum, he ordered. One soldier produced a vial containing luminous blue liquid and injected it into his own neck. His body convulsed, and wings of light erupted from his back as his eyes glazed over with an unnatural glow. What the hell? Naruto whispered. Kid, that's dangerous power, different from chakra but similarly potent, Kurama warned. We need to retreat. The transformed soldier rose into the air, his voice resonating with unnatural harmonics. In the name of the Seraph, all sinners shall be purged. He raised his hand, and a spear of light formed above his palm. With a gesture, he sent it hurtling toward Krul and Naruto. Naruto reacted instinctively. Despite his failing strength, he pushed himself in front of Krul, hands forming a seal to channel what little chakra remained. A thin barrier of golden energy manifested, a pale shadow of his usual power, but enough to deflect the spear's direct trajectory. The light weapon exploded on impact, sending Naruto flying backward. He crashed through a concrete wall, debris raining down around him as he hit the ground inside what had once been a building. Fresh blood soaked his tattered clothes, and the world spun dizzyingly around him. Naruto, stay conscious. Kurama's voice sounded distant, as if coming from the end of a long tunnel. Soft footsteps approached, and Krul's face appeared above him, her expression unreadable. You shielded me, she stated, sounding genuinely puzzled. Why would a human protect a vampire? Naruto coughed, tasting copper. Didn't think about it, just reacted. Her eyes narrowed thoughtfully. The soldiers are retreating to regroup, but they'll return with reinforcements. You have minutes to live, Naruto Uzumaki. I ask again. Shall I save you? What's the price? He managed. You would become like me, a vampire. Not exactly, perhaps, given your unique energy, but no longer human. Her voice remained clinical. Matter of fact, you would need blood to survive. You would serve me, at least until you understand this world. Naruto tried to focus on her face, considering his options with what clarity remained. Death wasn't acceptable. Not when he had no way to return home, not when there was still so much he needed to do. And whatever she was offering, it couldn't be worse than hosting Kurama had once seemed. Kit, I don't know how vampire blood might interact with my chakra, Kurama warned. It could be dangerous, more dangerous than dying here, Naruto whispered internally. Kurama was silent for a moment. Do what you must to survive. Naruto looked up at Krul, determination hardening his gaze despite his fading strength. Save me, he said simply. Song. Ethan flickered in Krul's crimson eyes, surprise, perhaps, or approval. She nodded once, then bit into her own wrist. Dark blood welled from the wound, glistening in the filtered sunlight. Drink, she commanded, pressing her wrist to his lips. Drink and be transformed, Naruto Uzumaki. The first drop of blood touched his tongue, and Naruto's world exploded into fire and darkness. Kurama's chakra surged violently within him, responding to the foreign substance. Every cell in his body seemed to tear apart and reconstruct itself as progenitor blood mixed with the chakra of the nine-tailed fox. Krul's eyes widened as she watched the transformation. Golden chakra erupted from Naruto's body, forming a protective shell around him that pushed her back. The wound in his side began to heal at an accelerated rate. Flesh knitting together under the combined influence of vampire blood and tailed beast chakra. Impossible, she whispered, watching as crimson streaks appeared in the golden energy. The two powers intertwining rather than fighting for dominance. Inside his mindscape, Naruto floated in the familiar space where he communicated with Kurama. But the usual calm water was now a churning sea of crimson and gold. Waves crashing against the walls of his consciousness. Kurama, what's happening? The fox appeared before him, his massive form seeming less solid than usual, chakra dispersing and reforming continuously. Her blood is powerful, ancient. It's rewriting your physical form while I'm trying to maintain your original nature. The result is unprecedented. Is it killing us? Kurama's eyes narrowed in concentration. It's changing us. Both of us. I'm adapting my chakra to accommodate the transformation, guiding it rather than fighting it. The Minskap. He shuddered as another wave of transformation swept through them. Naruto felt his canine teeth lengthen, his senses sharpen beyond even what Kurama's chakra typically provided. Hunger, profound and all-consuming, gnawed at him. I'm so thirsty, he gasped, clutching his throat. Bloodthirst, ***, Kurama confirmed. Part of the vampire nature. But I'm modifying it, integrating it with our chakra system. You'll need blood, but perhaps not as desperately as a normal vampire. In the physical world, Krul watched in fascination as Naruto's unconscious body underwent changes she had never witnessed before. His whisker markings deepened and darkened, his nails hardened into claws, and his skin paled slightly while retaining a healthy glow unlike the typical vampire pallor. Most remarkably, the wound that should have killed him healed completely, leaving not even a scar. When his eyes snapped open, they were neither fully human nor fully vampire, brilliant blue irises ringed with crimson, pupils vertically slitted like a fox's. He drew a sharp breath, then sat up with fluid grace that hadn't been present before, even in his healthy state. What am I? He asked, voice deeper than before, resonating with dual nature. Krul studied him with academic interest. Something new, she answered. A hybrid of vampire and whatever you were before. How do you feel? Naruto flexed his hands, feeling strength course through him, different from chakra but complementary to it. The thirst burned in his throat, but it wasn't overwhelming. Kurama's influence moderated the vampire instincts. Powerful, he admitted, and thirsty. Krul nodded, apparently satisfied. The thirst is natural. You'll need to feed soon, but first we must leave this area. The Moon Demon Company will return in greater numbers. She extended her small hand to him, a gesture that seemed simultaneously an offer of alliance and a claim of ownership. Naruto hesitated only briefly before taking it, his larger hand engulfing hers. As he stood, he realized that his senses had expanded dramatically. He could hear heartbeats from blocks away, smell the distinct scent of humans and vampires, see details in the rub. That would have been invisible before. His chakra felt different, denser, more potent, with crimson streaks flowing through the familiar golden energy. We'll go to Sanguinum, Krul decided, releasing his hand. The vampire city beneath the human settlement. There, I can observe your adaptation and you can learn about this world. And feed? Naruto asked, the burning thirst making it difficult to focus on anything else. Yes, she confirmed, her expression unreadable. Though I suspect your feeding might differ from ours, given your unique transformation. She turned abruptly, moving toward a partially collapsed subway entrance with preternatural speed. Naruto followed, adjusting quickly to his enhanced physical abilities. His movements were faster, more fluid, combining shinobi training with vampiric grace. As they descended into the darkness of the underground passage, Naruto glanced back at the ruined city one last time. Whatever had happened to bring him here, whatever this new existence meant. One thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same. Sanguinum wasn't what Naruto expected. The underground vampire city spread beneath the ruins of Tokyo like a dark reflection of the human world above. Gothic architecture merged with modern elements, creating a cityscape illuminated by eerie blue light that emanated from crystal formations embedded in the cavern ceiling. Vampires moved through elegant plazas and along elevated walkways, their pale faces and crimson eyes marking them as fundamentally different from humans despite their humanoid appearance. Most disturbing were the children, human children in white uniforms with collars around their necks, moving with downcast eyes among their vampire masters. Livestock, Krul had called them. The source of blood that sustained vampire society. This is wrong, Naruto muttered as they passed a group of children being escorted by a vampire guard. Krul glanced at him sharply. It's survival. Would you prefer we hunted humans to extinction? This way, they live under our protection while providing what we need. They're not livestock. They're people. Your human sentimentality is still strong, she observed. Interesting. Considering what you've become. They walked in silence after that, Naruto taking in the alien environment while trying to ignore the persistent thirst that clawed at his throat. Kurama's presence helped, his chakra buffering the more extreme vampire instincts, but the need for blood remained undeniable. Krul led him through less populated areas, avoiding major gatherings of vampires. Occasionally, nobles would bow to her as they passed, their curious gazes lingering on Naruto. His appearance alone marked him as something different, neither fully vampire nor human, with his unusual EY's and the whisker markings that had darkened following his transformation. Why are we avoiding the main thoroughfares? Naruto asked after they took a third detour. Your existence raises questions I'm not ready to answer. Krul replied candidly. You are an experiment, Naruto Uzumaki. Perhaps a weapon. Certainly a curiosity. The nobility would demand explanations if they saw you in your current state. And you don't have those explanations. She smiled thinly. Not ones I'm willing to share. They arrived at an ornate building that stood apart from the others, surrounded by gardens illuminated by the same blue crystal light. Guards stationed at the entrance bowed deeply as Krul approached, their eyes widening slightly at the sight of Naruto but asking no questions. Inside, the mansion was a study in elegant contradictions, ancient artifacts displayed alongside modern technology, Gothic design elements contrasting with minimalist spaces. Krul led him through hallways decorated with paintings spanning centuries of human history until they reached a private chamber that appeared to be a study of sorts. We can speak freely here, she said, closing the door behind them. No one enters without my permission. Naruto nodded, then winced as a fresh wave of thirst hit him. His vision sharpened painfully, every detail of the room suddenly in hyper-focus. He could hear Krul's movements with preternatural clarity, could smell her ancient blood beneath her pale skin. You need to feed, she stated, observing his struggle. I suspected it would come to this sooner rather than later. She moved to a concealed refrigeration unit and removed a crystal decanter filled with dark red liquid. Human blood, collected from our livestock. It will ease your thirst temporarily. Naruto hesitated, moral revulsion warring with physical need. You can maintain your principles later, once you've stabilized, Krul said impatiently. Newly turned vampires who don't feed become feral, driven solely by bloodlust. Is that what you want? She's right, Kit, Kurama added. I'm moderating the transformation as best I can, but you need blood to complete the process properly. Think of it as medicine. Reluctantly, Naruto accepted the decanter. The moment the glass touched his hands, the scent of blood intensified tenfold. His new fangs extended fully, pressing against his lower lip. Drink, Krul commanded softly. He lifted the decanter to his lips and drank. The first swallow hit him like a lightning bolt, energy flooding his system, chakra pathways lighting up as the blood interacted with his unique physiology. The thirst receded almost immediately, replaced by a rush of power unlike anything he'd experienced before. This feeling, he gasped, lowering the half-empty decanter. It's like Sage Mode and Kurama's chakra combined, but different. Krul's eyes narrowed with interest. Your energy, chakra, you call it, responds to the blood. Fascinating. Naruto wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. Embarrassed but undeniably revitalized. Thank you, he said simply. She waved away his gratitude. Now that you're functional, we have matters to discuss. Starting with how you came to be in my world. For the next hour, Naruto explained everything. The pursuit of the mysterious thief, the Uzumaki temple, the dimensional rift, and his arrival in the ruins of Tokyo. He described chakra and the shinobi world, the 5 great nations, and his role as a Jinchuriki hosting Kurama. Krul listened with intense concentration, occasionally asking precise questions that revealed a keen analytical mind. So this 9 tails, Kurama, resides within you still? She asked. Naruto nodded. We're partners now. He helped moderate the transformation when I drank your blood. That explains the unusual outcome. She mused. Normal humans turned by progenitor blood become common vampires, subservient to their sire. You've retained your independence and unique abilities, merged with vampire traits. What exactly are progenitors? Naruto asked. You called yourself the third progenitor. We are the original vampires, the first of our kind. The vampire nobility is structure. Hierarchically based on proximity to the first progenitor. As third progenitor, only 2 others outrank me in age and power. She spoke matter-of-factly, without pride or boasting. My blood is exceptionally potent, which is why your transformation was so dramatic. Naruto absorbed this information, connecting it to his own world's hierarchy of power. So you're basically the equivalent of a Kage, a village leader, in this world. In a sense, though vampires are not organized as your shinobi villages were. We are more feudal in structure. She rose from her seat, moving to a large map displayed on one wall. Now, tell me about this dimensional rift. You believe it remains active. Kurama sensed it. The connection between worlds wasn't severed when I came through, just temporarily stabilized. Naruto joined her at the map, studying the layout of what remained of Tokyo. I felt ripples, I guess you could call them. Places where the barrier between worlds is thinner. Krul's expression darkened. If others can cross through these ripples, it could disrupt the delicate balance we've established in this world. The human-vampire war is complicated enough without interdimensional interference. What happened here? Naruto asked, gesturing to the map. This world, it feels broken somehow. 8 years ago, a man-made virus was released that targeted humans over 13 years of age. It killed most of the adult human population within weeks. Krul's voice remained detached, clinical. In the chaos that followed, vampires emerged from hiding to save the surviving children. Offering protection in exchange for blood. Some humans resisted, forming the Japanese Imperial Demon Army you encountered earlier. Naruto processed the scale of the catastrophe. And the winged soldier, the one they called a Seraph. Something flickered in Krul's eyes, caution, perhaps. The humans experiment with forbidden magic, attempting to create weapons against vampires. The Seraphs are result. Humans infused with the power of mythological angels. Dangerous and unstable. She was holding something back, Naruto realized. But he didn't press the issue. They both had secrets to keep for now. What about these dimensional ripples? Krul continued. Can you locate them? Naruto closed his eyes, extending his senses in the way he'd learned during sage training. His awareness spread outward, chakra mingling with his new vampiric abilities to create a hybrid perception that extended far beyond the mansion walls. He could feel the fabric of reality itself, could detect the subtle ness where dimensions brushed against each other. There, he said, opening his eyes and pointing to several locations on the map. The largest disturbance is where I first arrived, but smaller ripples are forming throughout the city. They're spreading. Krul studied the pattern with concern. What could cause this expansion? The artifact the thief used, it was unstable. Kurama thinks it's continuing to degrade the barriers between worlds even after its destruction. Naruto frowned in concentration. And there's something else, a familiar chakra signature I sensed just before you found me. I think someone, or something, from my world might have followed me through. Before Krul could respond, a sharp knock at the door interrupted them. Her expression shifted instantly from engaged curiosity to regal indifference. Enter, she commanded. A tall, elegant vampire with long silver hair stepped into the room, his crimson eyes immediately fixing on Naruto with undisguised interest. My queen, he said, bowing with elaborate courtesy that somehow managed to seem mocking. I heard rumors of an unusual guest and simply had to see for myself. Farid Bottori, Krul acknowledged coldly. Your curiosity exceeds your manners. As usual, Farid smiled, revealing fangs that seemed somehow more predatory than those of other vampires Naruto had seen. Forgive me, but when whispers reach me of a hybrid being, neither fully vampire nor human, created by your noble blood, how could I stay away? His gaze swept over Naruto assessingly. Fascinating. He radiates power unlike anything I've encountered. What exactly have you created? Dear Krul, Naruto tensed, instinctively disliking this newcomer. Something about Farid reminded him of Orochimaru, the same calculating malice beneath a veneer of cultured refinement. My experiments are none of your concern, Farid, Krul stated flatly. State your business or leave. So protective, Farid murmured. Very well. I came to inform you that the Progenitor Council has requested updates on the human resistance movements. They're concerned about the Seraph weapons being deployed with increasing frequency. I'll address their concerns at the appropriate time. And what shall I tell them about your new project? Farid gestured toward Naruto. They'll be most interested to learn that the third progenitor has created a new form of vampire without consultation. Krul's expression hardened. You will tell them nothing, because you know nothing. Is that clear? The tension between them crackled like electricity. Naruto remained silent, obs. Observing the power dynamics at play while staying alert for any threat. Farid eventually inclined his head in a gesture of acquiescence that carried no actual submission. As you wish, my queen. But secrets have a way of revealing themselves. Particularly interesting ones. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, I nearly forgot. Patrols reported dimensional anomalies throughout the city, areas where reality seems distorted. Perhaps your new friend knows something about that. His smile suggested he already knew more than he was letting on. After Farid departed, Krul remained motionless for several seconds. Her expression unreadable. Can I trust him? Naruto asked, breaking the silence. Absolutely not, she replied without hesitation. Farid Bottori is ambitious, manipulative, and dangerous even by vampire standards. He's served me for centuries, but his loyalty extends only to his own interests. He knows something about the dimensional rifts. Yes, Krul agreed, which means we must act quickly. Farid collecting information is never a good sign. She moved to a concealed panel in the wall and pressed her palm against it. The panel slid aside, revealing weapons and equipment. You'll need these, she said, selecting a set of black clothing similar to vampire attire but modified to allow greater freedom of movement. Your current garments are conspicuous and damaged beyond repair. Naruto accepted the clothing, noting the quality of the materials and the subtle reinforcements that would provide protection without limiting mobility. We're going to investigate the rifts. Yes, tonight. Krul's expression was determined. Whatever came through from your world, we need to find it before Farid does. And we need to understand these dimensional disturbances before they grow beyond control. As Naruto changed into the provided attire, he felt Kurama stirring within his consciousness. Something feels wrong, kid, ***, the fox growled. The barrier between worlds is thinning faster than it should. And that silver-haired vampire, he's hiding something significant. I know, Naruto replied internally. But Krul is our best ally in this world for now. We need her knowledge and resources. Just remember that her priorities may not align with ours. Her interest in you is primarily scientific and strategic. Naruto glanced at Krul, who was studying the map with intense concentration. Despite her childlike appearance, she radiated ancient power and intelligence. There was cruelty in her. He'd seen it in how she referred to humans as livestock, but also a pragmatic rationality that he could work with. For now, our goals align, he told Kurama. We need to understand these rifts and find a way back home. She wants to protect her world from whatever might come through them. It's enough. When he finished changing, the black uniform fitting him perfectly, Krul looked up from the map and nodded with approval. The vampire aesthetic suits you, she commented. Though your eyes and markings still set you apart. I've never been good at blending in, Naruto admitted with a small smile. No, I don't imagine you have. Something almost like humor flickered in her crimson eyes. Come, night has fallen above. We'll begin our investigation at the largest rift where you first appeared. As they prepared to leave, Naruto felt the thirst beginning to build again, manageable now. But a constant reminder of what he had become. His reflection in a mirror caught his attention. The black uniform with crimson accents, his paler skin, the vertical slits in his blue-red eyes. The darkened whisker marks on his cheeks. Different, but still recognizably himself. What am I now? He wondered aloud. Krul paused at the door, considering him thoughtfully. Something unprecedented, she finally said. Neither vampire nor human nor whatever you were before. Something new. The question isn't what you are, Naruto Uzumaki, but what you will choose to become. With those words hanging between them, they departed into the night, seeking answers in a world torn between dimensions. The ruined cityscape looked different under moonlight, more haunting. ith shadows stretching between skeletal buildings and occasional flickers of movement suggesting they weren't alone. Naruto and Krul moved swiftly across rooftops and through abandoned structures, eyeing both vampire patrols and human resistance scouts. The largest rift is 2 kilometers ahead, Naruto said, his enhanced senses detecting the dimensional distortion. But there's something else, activity around it. People. Or something like people. Krul nodded, her small form graceful as she leapt across a gap between buildings. The area where you arrived has been quarantined by vampire guards. Farid's influence, no doubt. They paused on a water tower that offered a vantage point over the approaching district. In the distance, vampire sentries in uniform moved in regular patterns what had once been a commercial center. At the heart of their patrol route stood the remnants of the building where Naruto had first emerged into this world. We'll need to bypass the guards, Krul murmured. I could command them to leave, but that would alert Farid to our interest. Naruto studied the patrol patterns, shinobi training automatically identifying weaknesses in the security. There's a blind spot in their rotation. Near that collapsed section. We can slip through there and approach from below. Krul raised an eyebrow, impressed despite herself. You have experience with infiltration. I grew up pulling pranks on Anbu, elite shinobi guards. Breaking into secure areas was practically a hobby. He grinned, fangs glinting in the moonlight. They descended from their perch and approached the security perimeter, timing their movements to exploit the gap in the patrol schedule. When they reached the blind spot, Naruto created a single shadow clone, the technique coming easier now that his chakra had stabilized with vampire blood. Distraction, Krul guessed. Naruto nodded. He'll create a commotion on the far side, drawing the guards away from our entry point. Minutes later, an explosion of chakra flared on the opposite side of the perimeter. Guards rushed toward the disturbance, leaving their assigned positions. Naruto and Krul slipped through the gap, entering the restricted zone with effortless stealth. The dimensional distortion grew stronger as they approached the epicenter. Naruto felt it as pressure against his skin, an electric tingling that made his hair stand on end. Kurama's chakra responded to the proximity, swirling restlessly within him. We're close, the fox confirmed. The barrier between worlds is extremely thin here. They entered the building where Naruto had first appeared, now cordoned off with vampire warning signs. Inside, the air itself seemed to waver, reality flickering like a faulty light. At the center of the largest room, suspended about a meter above the floor, was a tear in space, a jagged wound in reality that pulsed with violet light. The rift, Naruto whispered, approaching carefully. It's grown since I came through. Krul studied the phenomenon with scientific detachment. Can you sense your world through it? Naruto extended his awareness toward the rift, chakra probing the dimensional boundary. Yes, faintly. It's like looking through frosted glass. I can make out shapes, feel familiar chakra signatures, but details are blurred. He reached toward the rift, but Krul caught his wrist, her grip surprisingly strong for her small size. Don't touch it directly, she warned. Dimensional boundaries are unstable. You might be pulled through, or torn apart. Naruto nodded, withdrawing his hand. Something else came through after me. I can sense traces of its chakra signature. What manner of creature? Human, but modified somehow. Similar to the Otsutsuki clan from my world, but corrupted. The AIM energy signature is the thief I was pursuing. Krul circled the rift, her crimson eyes reflecting its violet light. These smaller rifts throughout the city, are they connected to this one? They're extensions of it, Naruto confirmed. Like cracks spreading from a central impact point. And they're growing. Before Krul could respond, a new presence made itself known, a cold pressure of power that raised the hackles on Naruto's neck. He spun around, instinctively dropping into a defensive stance. A figure stood in the doorway, tall and elegant, with alabaster skin and flowing white hair. His eyes were a deeper crimson than Krul's, and the aura of power surrounding him made even Naruto's enhanced senses recoil. Second Progenitor Gills, Krul said, her voice carefully neutral. This is an unexpected honor. The ancient vampire's gaze moved from Krul to Naruto, then to the dimensional rift pulsing between them. Third Progenitor Tepes, he acknowledged. When reports reached the sea, Ounce of dimensional anomalies in your territory, I decided to investigate personally. I see the situation as more complex than described. His focus settled on Naruto, cold and analytical. This is your creation, the hybrid that Farid Badori mentioned. Krul's expression betrayed nothing. Yes, an experiment with unexpected results. Unauthorized experimentation with progenitor blood is forbidden, Krul. You know this. Exceptional circumstances require exceptional measures, she countered smoothly. The dimensional rifts posed an immediate threat. I acted to secure information and capabilities to address it. Gils approached the rift, seemingly unconcerned by its unstable nature. These disturbances began appearing 3 days ago, coinciding with the emergence of your experiment. Yet you filed no report with the council. I was gathering data before presenting my findings, Krul replied. Preliminary information would have been useless. The second progenitor's attention returned to Naruto. What is your name? Hybrid. Naruto Uzumaki, he answered, meeting the ancient vampire's gaze without flinching. Despite the overwhelming pressure of the progenitor's presence, Naruto refused to show submission. He had faced gods and demons in his world, he would not cower here. Something like surprise flickered across Erd's impassive features. You lack the deference expected of a newly turned vampire. Interesting. I'm not exactly a typical vampire, Naruto pointed out. Clearly, Erd turned back to Krul. The council requires full disclosure regarding these rifts in your experiment. You will present yourself and your creation at Sanguinum's central chamber tomorrow night. It wasn't a request but a command. Krul inclined her head slightly, the minimum gesture of a acknowledgement she could offer without outright defiance. As the council wishes, she said. Erd moved toward the exit, then paused. One more thing, Krul. Another anomaly was discovered near the human stronghold of Shibuya, a creature neither human nor vampire, wielding strange powers. The guards who encountered it did not survive to provide a detailed report. With that ominous statement, he departed, his presence lingering in the air like frost long after he'd gone. That was the second progenitor. Naruto asked when he was certain Erd was beyond earshot. Yes, one of only 2 vampires who outranked me in the hierarchy. Krul's expression was troubled. His personal involvement suggests the council considers these dimensional disturbances a serious threat. And the creature he mentioned, the one near Shibuya, almost certainly whatever followed you from your world. Krul's eyes narrowed. We need to find it before either the progenitor council or the human army does. Naruto turned back to the rift. Studying its pulsating light, I might be able to stabilize this temporarily. Not close it completely, but slow its growth and the formation of new rifts. How? In my world, I've say. Aled-tailed beasts and other powerful entities. Dimensional energy isn't that different from Biju Chakra, wild and uncontrolled, but subject to the right sealing techniques. He extended his hands toward the rift without touching it. I'll need to adapt Uzumaki sealing methods to work with this energy. Golden chakra flowed from his palms, intermingling with crimson streaks that represented his new vampire nature. The combined energy formed intricate patterns in the air, sealing formulas that shifted and adapted as Naruto refined them through trial and error. Careful, Kit, ****, Kurama cautioned. Traditional seals won't work on pure dimensional energy. You need to incorporate elements of space-time manipulation. Naruto nodded, sweat beading on his forehead as he concentrated. The sealing pattern grew more complex, incorporating elements of the Flying Thunder God technique he'd learned from studying his father's notes, combined with Uzumaki containment principles. Krul watched in fascination as the golden crimson energy coalesced around the rift, forming a net-like structure that pulsed in counter-rhythm to the dimensional tear's fluctuations. Dimensional seal. Stabilizing lattice, Naruto intoned, pushing the completed formula into the rift. The violet light flared brilliantly, then settled into a more regular pulse. The wavering in the air diminished, and the pressure against Naruto's senses decreased significantly. It worked, he said, lowering his arms. The rift is stabilized, not closed, but no longer expanding. The smaller rifts throughout the city should stop growing as well. Krul studied the transformed rift with analytical interest. Impressive. This chakra of yours has applications I hadn't anticipated. The seal is temporary, Naruto cautioned. It will hold for perhaps a week. But after that, the dimensional energy will erode it. We need to find a permanent solution, and quickly. And locate whatever creature crossed over from your world, Krul added. If it's as powerful as you suggest, it could disrupt the already precarious balance between vampires and humans. Naruto nodded, then stiffened as his enhanced senses detected approaching figures. Someone's coming. Multiple signatures, moving fast. Krul tensed. Vampire reinforcements. No. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he identified the energy patterns. Humans. The Moon Demon Company, like the ones who attacked us earlier. But stronger. They retreated to a shadowed alcove as a squad of black uniformed soldiers entered the building, weapons drawn. At their head was a young man with dark hair and intense green eyes. Radiating a familiar type of power. That's Lieutenant Colonel Ichino's, Krul whispered. One of the human army's elite officers. He carries a Black Demon series weapon, extremely dangerous. Even to progenitors. Naruto observed the humans as they approached the stabilized rift, setting up equipment around it. They're studying it, he murmured. Taking measurements. The humans have been investigating the rifts as well, Krul confirmed. They likely hope to weaponize the dimensional energy against vampires. We should leave, Naruto suggested. We've done what we came to do. And confrontation won't help right now. Krul nodded reluctantly. Agreed. We need to prepare for the council meeting tomorrow night. And you need to feed again, using that much Po.R so soon after your transformation has depleted your reserves. They slipped away undetected, leaving the human soldiers to their research. As they traversed the ruined city back toward Sanguinum, Naruto felt the thirst rising again, sharper now after expending so much energy on the sealing technique. The council meeting will be dangerous, Krul said as they traveled. The progenitors may demand your destruction if they consider you a threat to vampire society. Let them try, Naruto replied, a hint of Kurama's growl in his voice. Krul's lips curved in a small smile. Your confidence is either admirable or foolish. Progenitors have lived for thousands of years, accumulating power you can scarcely imagine. I've faced ancient beings before. The Otsutsuki clan were essentially gods. I'm still here, they're not. Perhaps, Krul acknowledged, but tomorrow will require diplomacy as much as strength. The council must be convinced that you, and by extension, my decision to create you, serve vampire interests. When they reached the entrance to Sanguinum, Naruto paused, looking back at the ruined city silhouetted against the night sky. Somewhere out there, a creature from his world was moving with unknown purpose. The dimensional rifts, though temporarily stabilized, remained a threat, and tomorrow would bring confrontation with the most powerful vampires in this world. One crisis at a time, Kid, Kurama advised. First we survive the council. Then we hunt down whatever followed us here. And find a way home, Naruto added silently. Eventually. Though I sense your priorities may be evolving. Naruto glanced at Krul, who waited for him at the entrance to the underground city. Despite her small stature and youthful appearance, she carried herself with the confidence of millennia. There was something compelling about her ancient knowledge, her adaptability, the hints of complexity beneath her cold exterior. My priority is protecting both worlds from whatever the dimensional rifts might unleash, Naruto replied to Kurama. The fox's rumbling laughter echoed in his mind. If you say so, Kit. If you say so. Together, Naruto and Krul descended into Sanguinum. The vampire city closing around them like the pages of a book. One chapter ending, another about to begin. Chapter 1 end. Chapter 2. Blood and Bonds. The Progenitor Council chamber stretched high above them. Stone pillars rising to a vaulted ceiling adorned with ancient murals depicting vampire history. 13 ornate thrones arranged in a semicircle dominated the central platform, though only 7 were currently occupied. The empty seats spoke volumes about the absent progenitors, some dead, others secluded in distant territories. Naruto stood beside Krul at the center of the chamber, acutely aware of the critical gazes fixed upon him. Despite the opulent surroundings, the atmosphere felt more like a trial than a meeting. Giles, the second progenitor, raised his hand for silence as the assembled nobles' murmurs echoed through the vast space. Third progenitor Krul Tepes, his voice resonated with authority that seemed to press against Naruto's enhanced senses. You Street, and before this council to account for 2 matters of grave concern. the dimensional anomalies appearing throughout your territory, and your unauthorized creation of this hybrid creature. Krul stepped forward, her small stature belied by the power she radiated. Honorable Council, the matters are connected. The dimensional rifts began appearing 3 days ago, coinciding with the arrival of an intruder from another reality. This intruder, Naruto Uzumaki, possessed unique energy capable of interacting with our world in unprecedented ways. She gestured toward Naruto with elegant precision. Rather than destroy this valuable source of information, I chose to preserve it by administering my blood when he was mortally wounded. The result was unexpected but fortuitous, a hybrid being with no ledge of dimensional mechanics and power that could prove essential in addressing the rifts. Lest Laurier, a female progenitor with silver hair and cold eyes, leaned forward on her throne. You should have consulted the council before such an experiment, Krul. Progenitor blood is not to be given lightly, especially to anomalous beings. The situation required immediate action, Krul countered smoothly. The intruder was dying, and with him would have died crucial knowledge about the dimensional threats. And what knowledge has your experiment yielded? Asked his gaze shifting to Naruto. Naruto met the second progenitor's eyes without wavering. I've identified the cause of the rifts, an artifact from my world that tore the boundary between dimensions. I've also temporarily stabilized the largest rift, preventing further expansion. Temporarily, repeated, one eyebrow raised. The seal I placed will hold for approximately 1 week, Naruto explained. After that, a more permanent solution will be needed. Farid Batori, who stood among the noble observers rather than the council, stepped forward with his customary theatrical grace. If I may, honorable progenitors, there's a rather significant detail our Queen Krul has omitted. Krul's eyes narrowed dangerously. You have not been recognized by the council, Farid. My apologies, Farid said with a bow that managed to be both elegant and mocking. I merely thought the council should know that a second intruder from this alternative dimension has been detected. One that has already killed several vampire patrols. A ripple of concern passed through the gathered nobles. Erd's expression darkened further. Is this true? He demanded of Krul. Yes, she admitted without hesitation. A second entity crossed through the rift after Naruto. We have not yet identified it, but based on Naruto's information, it is likely a modified human from his world with dangerous abilities. And you didn't think this warranted immediate disclosure? Lest asked, incredulous. I intended to present complete information rather than fragments, Krul replied. Naruto sensed the council's growing hostility. The political maneuvering reminded him of 5 Cage Summit meetings, but with centuries of vampire politics adding layers of complexity. He decided to redirect the conversation. The second intruder is why I requested Queen Krul's assistance. He interjected, drawing all eyes to him. In my world, I tracked this entity. It was stealing artifacts related to dimensional travel. Its purpose appears to be harvesting power from both worlds, including the unique energy vampires possess. His gambit worked. The council's focus shifted from Krul's perceived deception to the external threat. What manner of creature could harvest progenitor power? Asked a gaunt progenitor Naruto hadn't been introduced to. In my world, there exists a clan called the Otsutsuki, beings who travel between dimensions absorbing the life energy of entire planets. Naruto explained. The intruder appears to be a modified human with Otsutsuki-like abilities, adapted specifically to target the power sources of both our worlds. And you can track this creature? Asked, his interest clearly piqued. Yes, its energy signature is distinctive, a corruption of natural chakra that I can sense, especially since my transformation. The council members exchanged glances, having a silent conversation through centuries of shared understanding. Finally, spoke again. The council will deliberate on these matters until a decision is reached. Third progenitor Tepes and her creation will remain in Sanguinum under observation. He fixed Krul with a stern gaze. You were restricted from leaving the city without explicit permission. Krul bowed her head slightly. As the council wishes. As they left the chamber, Naruto could feel the weight of dozens of eyes following them, some curious, others hostile, but all calculating what the existence of a vampire shinobi hybrid might mean for their world. That went better than expected, Krul murmured as they walked through the elaborate corridors of the central keep. Farid was trying to undermine you, Naruto observed. Always, she confirmed. But you redirected their attention skillfully. You have experience with such councils. In my world, I attended cage summits, meetings of the 5 village leaders. Politics is politics, regardless of species. A small smile touched Krul's lips. Indeed, now we have perhaps a day before the council renders its decision. We should use that time productively. Training, Naruto guessed. Yes, your vampire abilities remain largely untapped, and I admit curiosity about this chakra you wield. An exchange of knowledge would benefit us both. They reached her mansion without further incident, though Naruto noticed increased attention from passing vampires. Word of his existence was spreading through Sanguinum. Once inside the safety of Krul's private training chamber, a vast underground space reinforced to withstand significant power, they faced each other across polished stone. Show me what you can do, Krul challenged. Not your shinobi techniques. I want to see how progenitor blood has manifested in your hybrid form. Naruto nodded, then reached inward, exploring the crimson energy that now flowed alongside his chakra. Since his transformation, he'd relied primarily on familiar jutsu, but he could feel new abilities simmering beneath the surface, waiting to be called forth. He extended his hand, focusing on the vampire aspects of his power. Crimson energy spiraled around his arm, solidifying into something between chakra and physical matter, denser than the former, more malleable than the latter. This energy, he said, studying the crimson aura, it responds differently than chakra. More intent-based than technique-based. Progenitor power is indeed tied to will and intent, Krul confirmed. Unlike human blood weapons that require complex spells, our abilities manifest as extensions of our desire. Naruto concentrated, shaping the crimson energy into a clawed appendage that extended from his hand. The construct moved as he directed, grasping a training dummy and crushing it effortlessly. Impressive for a first attempt, Krul noted. Now try speed. Vampire velocity is fundamentally different from human movement, less about muscle and more about dimensionally shifting your mass. She demonstrated, vanishing from her position and reappearing instantly across the chamber. Not the body flicker technique shinobi used, but something more fundamental, as if she'd simply decided that distance was irrelevant. Naruto focused on the vampire essence within him, willing himself to move as she had. His body responded, dissolving into crimson particles that reassembled beside Krul. The sensation was disorienting, different from any jutsu he'd used before. Whoa, he gasped, steadying himself. That was strange. You'll adapt, Krul said confidently. Your body already has the necessary modifications from my blood. You simply need to train your mind to utilize them properly. For the next several hours, she guided him through vampire abilities, from enhanced sensory perception to manipulating blood as a weapon. Naruto proved an exceptionally quick study, his shinobi training an adaptable knack. You were allowing him to grasp concepts that typically took fledgling vampires decades to master. Your progress is remarkable, Krul observed as Naruto successfully manifested a blood-forged blade from his palm. Most newly turned vampires require years to develop such control. I've always been a fast learner with physical techniques, Naruto replied, examining the crimson blade with interest. And Kurama helps stabilize the transformation process. Krul's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. This nine-tails entity within you, I'm curious about it. You describe your relationship as a partnership now, but was it always so? Naruto dispelled the blood blade, golden chakra replacing crimson as he relaxed his focus on vampire abilities. No, for most of my life, Kurama was a prisoner, and I his jailer. We hated each other. What changed? Understanding, Naruto said simply. I came to see him as more than just a monster, and he came to see me as more than just a human container. We found common ground. Respect first, then trust. And eventually friendship. You're making me sound soft, kid, ***, Kurama grumbled within his mind, though there was no real irritation in his tone. Krul observed him with analytical interest. Such bonds are rare among vampires. Centuries of existence tend to calcify one's perspective rather than expand it. Your turn, Naruto said, sitting cross-legged on the chamber floor. You've seen chakra in action. Want to try using it yourself? Krul raised an eyebrow. Is that possible? Chakra appears to be specific to your world's biology. Maybe, maybe not. Vampire physiology is different from human. But you still have a physical form and life energy. The principle should be the same, combining physical and spiritual energies to create chakra. She considered this, then gracefully sat across from him. What must I do? First, feel the energy inside you, Naruto instructed, shifting into the teaching role he'd occasionally taken with younger shinobi in Konoha. Vampires clearly have enormous reserves of power. The trick is dividing it into its component parts, then recombining them intentionally. He reached out, gently placing his palm a few inches from her chest. Golden chakra extended from his hand, interacting with the crimson aura that surrounded her. Here, he said, his chakra probing delicately. Your physical energy is dominant, probably Becca. Use of your vampire nature, but spiritual energy exists alongside it. Try separating them in your mind, like sorting two different colored liquids that have been mixed. Krul closed her eyes, her expression shifting to intense concentration. Centuries of disciplined power control made her exceptionally receptive to the exercise. After several minutes, a flicker of gold appeared within her crimson aura, just a spark. But unmistakably chakra. I feel it, she said, eyes still closed. A different type of energy, more versatile than vampire power, though less dense. That's it, Naruto encouraged. Now shape it. Imagine molding it like clay. The spark grew, swirling around her hands in a pale imitation of the Rasengan. It was rudimentary and unstable, but for a first attempt at chakra manipulation from someone not born to it. Remarkable. Extraordinary, Krul murmured, opening her eyes to observe the chakra manifestation. Your world's energy responds to different principles than ours. The applications could be significant. The chakra dissipated as her concentration broke, but the accomplishment remained. Naruto grinned, genuinely impressed. Most people take years to develop that level of chakra control. Your experience with vampire powers gives you an advantage. As your experience with chakra gives you an advantage with vampire abilities, she noted. We each bring complementary skills to this alliance. The word, alliance, hung between them, a careful, measured term that acknowledged their cooperation while maintaining boundaries. Yet Naruto sensed that something more complex was developing. Not friendship exactly, but a mutual fascination and growing respect. Their training session was interrupted by a servant announcing the arrival of a council messenger. The Mise Sage was brief. Naruto and Krul were granted permission to hunt the dimensional intruder, provided they reported all findings directly to the council and returned to Sanguinum afterward. They see the value in eliminating the threat quickly, Krul observed after dismissing the messenger. Though they undoubtedly hope we'll fail, giving them reason to take more direct control of the situation. Politics is the same everywhere, Naruto said with a wry smile. So we hunt tonight. Yes, but first, you need to feed. She moved to a concealed panel, retrieving a crystal decanter of blood. Your energy expenditure during training was significant. Naruto accepted the container with less reluctance than before. The vampire thirst had become familiar now, not comfortable, but manageable. He drank deeply, feeling power surge through his hybrid system as the blood interacted with his chakra pathways. The children who provide this blood, he said after lowering the decanter. How are they treated? Krul studied him, seemingly unsurprised by the question. Better than most humans in this world. They receive food, shelter, protection, medical care. Their blood is taken in measured amounts that allow full recovery. But they're still prisoners. They're survivors, she countered. The alternative was extinction when the virus decimated human civilization. Naruto set the decanter aside, ipping his mouth with the back of his hand. In my world, we found that cooperation between different species yielded better results than subjugation. Humans and vampires could work together rather than existing as predator and prey. A charming idealism, Krul said, though her tone lacked mockery. Perhaps in your world, such harmony was possible. Here, centuries of enmity aren't easily overcome. History can change, Naruto insisted. I've seen lifelong enemies become allies when they discovered common ground. Something flickered in Krul's crimson eyes, not quite hope, but perhaps contemplation. You speak from experience. The 5 great nations were at war for generations. Now they stand united as an alliance. It took understanding and compromise, and yes, common enemies, but change happened. An interesting perspective, she acknowledged. But for now, we have a more immediate concern. The intruder from your world poses a threat to both vampires and humans. As dusk fell above Sanguinum, they prepared for the hunt. Naruto donned the reinforced black attire Krul had provided, now modified to better accommodate his fighting style. Krul herself wore her usual elaborate dress, How Naruto had learned that the seemingly impractical garment was enchanted for both protection and mobility. I've sensed the intruder's chakra signature near the southern district, Naruto reported as they ascended toward the surface. It's moving between rifts, absorbing energy from them. Strengthening itself, Krul surmised. We should intercept before it grows too powerful. They emerged into the ruins of Tokyo as night descended fully, the crumbling cityscape illuminated by a waxing moon. Naruto paused, extending his senses to locate their quarry. There, he said, pointing toward I stand skyscraper that remained partially intact. The signature is stronger now. It's definitely Otsutsuki derived, but altered somehow. They moved across the ruined city with preternatural speed, Naruto adapting to his vampire abilities with increasing confidence. His senses had sharpened dramatically since the transformation, allowing him to detect subtle changes in air currents, distant heartbeats, and the unique energy signatures of different beings. As they approached the target building, Naruto suddenly halted, raising a hand in warning. Wait, something's wrong. Krul stopped beside him, instantly alert. What do you sense? The chakra signature just multiplied. Like it's splitting into multiple entities. They took cover behind a collapsed wall, observing the skyscraper from a distance. The upper floors glowed with an eerie violet light similar to the dimensional rifts, pulsing in an irregular rhythm. I've seen this before, Naruto murmured. White Zetsu from my world Su. LD create near-perfect clones with distinct chakra signatures. A diversionary tactic, Krul suggested. Or it's building an army. Either way, we need to approach carefully. They circled the building, identifying potential entry points while avoiding detection. Naruto created shadow clones to scout ahead, the technique coming easier now that he'd fed his chakra reserves bolstered by vampire blood. The clones reported back through dispersion. The skyscraper's upper levels contained dozens of humanoid figures with pale skin and strange protrusions, all seemingly connected to a central entity. Hat hovered before a miniature dimensional rift. It's harvesting dimensional energy and using it to create duplicates of itself, Naruto concluded. Similar to how White Zetsu functioned during the Fourth Shinobi War. But with dimensional power rather than chakra. How do we approach? Krul asked, her crimson eyes narrowed in calculation. Direct confrontation would alert all the duplicates. We need to target the original, the one controlling the others. Naruto closed his eyes, entering Sage mode to enhance his sensory abilities further. The natural energy of this world felt different from his own, thinner somehow. Less vibrant, but still usable. His hybrid nature seemed to enhance rather than hinder the technique, vampire senses adding new dimensions to Sage perception. The original is on the 40th floor, he reported, opening eyes that now combined Sage markings with vampiric crimson. It's drawing energy from a rift it's somehow stabilized for harvesting. Can you teleport us directly to that location? Krul asked. Naruto shook his head, not without placing a marker first. But I have another idea. He explained his plan quickly. Krul listened with analytical attention, earring refinements based on her knowledge of the building's likely structure and vampire abilities. Their strategy set, they moved into position, Krul ascending the exterior wall with inhuman grace will. Naruto created a distraction at the ground level. Shadow Clone Jutsu. His technique produced 50 clones that immediately began infiltrating the lower floors, drawing the attention of the duplicates stationed as sentries. As alarms spread through the creature's network, Naruto himself used the vampire dimensional movement Krul had taught him, dissolving into crimson particles that reassembled on the 39th floor. From there, he moved silently through the abandoned office space, approaching the ceiling where the original entity operated above. Through their planned synchronization, Krul reached the exterior window of the 40th floor at precisely the same moment Naruto positioned himself below. She caught his eye through a crack in the ceiling tiles and nodded once. Their attack was perfectly coordinated. Krul shattered the reinforced glass, entering in a blur of motion that drew the creature's attention. Simultaneously, Naruto burst through the ceiling, a Rasengan infused, with vampire blood energy spiraling in his palm. Blood Rasengan. The hybrid technique struck the creature's back before it could fully turn, tearing through its strange flesh with devastating efficiency. The entity howled, a sound like rending metal, as it was thrown forward by the impact. Krul capitalized on its disorientation, her small form becoming a whirlwind of lethal strikes that severed K.Y. tendrils connecting the creature to its duplicates. Now fully visible, the intruder revealed its true form, humanoid but grotesquely modified, with pale skin covered in black markings reminiscent of the Otsutsuki clan but corrupted into asymmetrical patterns. A single Rinne Sharingan dominated its forehead, while its mouth stretched impossibly wide to reveal multiple rows of needle-like teeth. Uzumaki, it hissed, voice distorted as if speaking through water. The Jinchuriki, perfect vessel. It lunged at Naruto with startling speed, limbs elongating into blade-like appendages. Naruto shifted to his vampire movement technique, avoiding the attack while countering with a combination of taijutsu and blood manipulation that Krul had taught him. "You know me," Naruto said, dodging another strike. "Who are you?" The creature laughed, a sound that seemed to come from multiple throats simultaneously. "I am perfection, evolution. I am what the Otsutsuki feared to become." It unleashed a barrage of bone projectiles similar to Kimimara's techniques, forcing both Naruto and Krul to evade in different directions. The miniature rift behind the creature pulsed faster, feeding it energy that it converted into attacks. It's drawing power from the rift, Naruto called to Krul. "We need to disrupt the connection." Krul moved with progenitor speed, circling behind the creature toward the dimensional tier. The entity anticipated this, however, extending a forest of bone spikes from the floor to block her path. "Your blood smells ancient," it said to Krul, multiple eyes opening across its torso to track her movements. "Potent. I will absorb your essence after I claim the Jinchuriki." "You'll claim nothing," Krul replied coldly, her hand transforming into a crimson blade that sheared through the bone forest with frightening efficiency. While the creature focused on Krul, Naruto prepared a more complex attack. Drawing on both Sage Chakra and Vampire Blood power, he formed Hand CLS for a technique he'd been developing during training. Blood Clone Jutsu. Crimson Barrage. Instead of standard shadow clones, what materialized were constructs of solidified blood chakra, fewer in number than his typical shadow clones but significantly more durable and powerful. The blood clones surrounded the creature, attacking from multiple angles with synchronized precision. The entity howled in frustration, its attention divided between the blood clones, Krul's advance toward the rift, and Naruto himself. It began a series of hand seals that Naruto recognized from his pursuit in the Uzumaki temple. "Krul, it's trying to expand the rift," she responded instantly, abandoning her approach to the dimensional tear and instead focusing on disrupting the creature's hand seals. Her small form became a blur of motion, striking with such speed that the air cracked around her. The creature staggered under her assault but managed to complete enough of the sequence to cause the rift to pulse violently. The room shuddered as dimensional energy surged outward in concentric waves. Too late, it gurgled through a mouth that split across its chest. The convergence begins. Naruto recognized the danger immediately. The rift was destabilizing, threatening to expand catastrophically. Drawing on his sealing knowledge, he began forming counter seals in the air with combined chakra and blood energy. "I need time," he called to Krul. "Keep it occupied while I stabilize the rift." "With pleasure," she replied, her crimson eyes glowing with battle lust. What followed was a display of Progenitor power that left even Naruto impressed. Krul's childlike form belied the devastating force she commanded. She moved faster than the creature could track, each strike precise and calculated to cause maximum damage with minimum effort. When the entity attempted to regenerate damaged areas, she adjusted her attacks to target different vulnerabilities. Meanwhile, Naruto's blood clones continued their assault, providing additional distraction while he worked on the sealing formula. The creature fought with increasing desperation, its body morphing through various defensive configurations as it tried to protect itself while maintaining the rift expansion. "Your world will be consumed," it snarled at Naruto. "Both worlds will serve as my sustenance." The power of Biju and progenitors combined will make me a god. I've heard that before, Naruto replied, fingers tracing complex patterns as the sealing formula neared completion. It didn't work out well for the last guy either. The creature roared in frustration, then made a desperate gambit. It plunged its arm directly into the pulsing rift, drawing raw dimensional energy into itself. Its body bulged grotesquely as power flooded its system, tissue rupturing and reforming in rapid succession. Krul, get back, Naruto shouted, recognizing the danger. The creature exploded outward, tendrils of corrupted dimensional energy lashing in all directions. One caught Krul before she could fully evade, sending her small form crashing through a concrete support pillar. Naruto abandoned the sealing formula, instinctively moving to her aid. The vampire queen lay amid rubble, momentarily stunned by the impact. The creature, now grotesquely transformed into a writhing mass of flesh and dimensional energy, seized the opportunity to attack. You first, Jinchuriki, it gurgled, multiple limbs extending toward Naruto with lethal intent. Your power will feed my ascension. Time seemed to slow as Naruto assessed the situation. Krul was temporarily incapacitated. The rift was expanding dangerously. The creature was channeling dimensional energy directly, making it unpredictably powerful. Standard tactics wouldn't suffice. Kit, we need to use the technique, Kurama suggested urgently. It's not stable yet, Naruto replied internally. We haven't perfected the integration of vampire blood with your chakra. We don't have a choice. The rift will consume this entire district if we don't stop it now. Naruto knew Kurama was right. He took a deep breath, then allowed golden chakra to surge outward from his body, Crimson S. Streams of vampire power intertwining with the familiar energy. The combination created something new, a hybrid transformation that manifested as a golden crimson aura surrounding him, Nine Tails Foreman. G behind him while vampire wings of solidified blood extended from his back. Blood chakra mode, he whispered, feeling the unprecedented power coursing through his transformed body. The creature hesitated, its many eyes widening at the sight of Naruto's metamorphosis. Impossible. The integration should destroy you. I'm good at achieving the impossible, Naruto replied, his voice resonating with dual energy. He moved with speed that exceeded even Krul's progenitor abilities, appearing behind the creature before it could react. A hand of solidified blood chakra gripped the tendrils connecting the entity to the rift, severing them with a single squeeze. The creature shrieked as its power source was cut off. It tried to counterattack, but Naruto was already forming a new technique, one that combined the Rasengan with vampire blood manipulation. Crimson Sage Art. Spiraling Blood Star. The technique manifested as a massive shuriken-shaped Rasengan infused with vampire blood, sage chakra, and Kurama's power. When it struck the creature, it didn't simply damage physical form, it disrupted the dimensional energy the entity had absorbed, causing a cascading failure that tore it apart from the inside. No. The creature wailed as its body began to disintegrate. I was to become perfection. The convergence was within my grasp. Some boundaries aren't meant to be crossed, Naruto said, watching as the entity collapsed into particles of light that dissipated into the air. With the creature destroyed, he turned his attention to the destabilized rift. The dimensional tear pulsed erratically, expanding and contracting in dangerous cycles. Naruto approached it, hands extended as he channeled his hybrid energy into a containment seal. Crimson Sage Art. Dimensional Boundary Seal. The technique was complex, combining Uzumaki sealing principles with vampire blood manipulation and sage chakra perception to identify and reinforce the natural boundaries between dimensions. Golden crimson energy flowed from Naruto's palms, encircling the rift in concentric rings that gradually contracted, forcing the tear to close. The effort was enormous. Sweat beaded on Naruto's forehead as he maintained concentration, feeling the resistance of dimensional energy fighting against his seal. Just as his strength began to falter, a small hand touched his shoulder. Allow me to assist, Krul said, her voice steady despite the injuries she'd sustained. She extended her hand alongside his, her own crimson energy flowing into the sealing pattern. Though she lacked formal training in chakra manipulation, centuries of progenitor power control allowed her to intuitively support Naruto's technique, adding her strength to his. Together, they forced the rift closed until only a pinpoint of violet light remained, stable and contained. No longer a threat to either world. Naruto's transformation receded as the immediate danger passed, his hybrid form returning to its normal state. He staggered slightly, the combination of vampire blood powers and advanced chakra techniques having drained his reserves significantly. Krul steadied him, her small hand firm on his arm. "That transformation," she said, her tone carefully neutral but her eyes intensely curious. "I've never seen anything like it." "Blood chakra mode," Naruto explained between deep breaths. "A combination of Kurama's chakra, sage energy, and vampire blood power. It's still experimental. Experimental but effective," she noted, glancing at the spot where the creature had been. "The intruder is completely destroyed. Not even ash remains." Naruto nodded, then looked more closely at Krul. Though she maintained her regal composure, he could see evidence of the damage she'd sustained, a tear in her elaborate dress revealing pale skin that was slowly healing from what must have been a significant wound. "You're hurt," he said with concern. "Healing already," she dismissed. "Progenitors recover quickly." Despite her assurance, Naruto noticed she moved with slightly less fluidity than usual as they surveyed the aftermath of the battle. The room was devastated. Concrete pillars shattered, floors cracked, walls reduced to rubble. Only the sealed rift remained intact, a tiny point of violet light suspended in midair. What did the creature mean by convergence? Krul asked as they prepared to depart. "I think it was trying to force a permanent merger between our worlds," Naruto theorized. "Not just crossing between them, but literally fusing them together. To what end? Power, primarily. In my world, the Otsutsuki clan traveled between dimensions harvesting the chakra of entire planets. This creature seemed to be an offshoot, perhaps an experiment gone wrong or an evolutionary branch, that discovered vampire blood could be combined with chakra for even greater power. Like what happened with you," Krul observed. "Yes, but without balance or control. It wanted to consume both worlds' energy sources rather than harmonize with them." They made their way down through the ruined skyscraper, encountering the dissolved remnants of the creature's duplicates. Without the original to maintain them, the copies had simply fallen apart, leaving behind only stains of strange fluid that evaporated upon contact with air. As they emerged from the building into the night, Naruto sensed movement nearby, multiple signatures approaching rapidly. "We have company," he warned. "Vampire nobles, from the feel of them." Krul nodded, her expression shifting back to its usual regal impassivity. "The council undoubtedly sent observers to monitor our progress." 6 vampires appeared, led by a noble Naruto recognized from the council chamber, Crowley Usford, a towering figure with crimson hair and an perpetually amused expression. "Third progenitor." Crowley greeted Krul with a formal bow that somehow conveyed casual indifference rather than true respect. The council felt the energy discharge from here. "Quite impressive. The intruder has been eliminated," Krul stated flatly. "The dimensional rift has been sealed. You may report our success to the council." Crowley's gaze shifted to Naruto, studying him with undisguised curiosity. "Your hybrid performed admirably, I see." The rumors of his abilities appear to be understated rather than exaggerated. "Naruto Uzumaki is not property to be discussed in such terms," Krul corrected, a dangerous edge entering her voice. "He is an ally of Sanguinum who has just prevented a catastrophe that threatened our entire world." The correction seemed to amuse Crowley further. "Of course, my queen. No offense intended." He turned to his companions. "Secure the area. I want the building examined thoroughly before humans discover it." As the other vampires dispersed to carry out his orders, Crowley lingered, his expression turning more serious. "The council requests your immediate return to Sanguinum." "Both of you." "We intended to return regardless," Krul replied. "Yes, but now there's additional urgency. News has spread through the noble houses about your experiment." He nodded toward Naruto. "Questions are being raised about the implications for vampire hierarchy and progenitor authority." "Politics," Krul said dismissively. "The destruction of an interdimensional threat should take precedence." "One would think," Crowley agreed with false sympathy. "But you know how nobles are. They see a powerful new being with progenitor blood who isn't bound by traditional hierarchy, and they begin to worry about their positions." The implication was clear. Naruto's existence had become a political liability for Krul. By creating a hybrid being outside established vampire protocols, she had challenged the foundation of their societal structure. "We'll return immediately," she decided, apparently recognizing the severity of the situation. As they traveled back toward Sanguinum, Naruto noticed Krul's uncharacteristic silence. Her expression remained composed, but tension radiated from her small form. "The nobles fear me," he observed quietly when they were beyond Crowley's hearing. "They fear what you represent," Krul corrected. "Vampire society has remained largely unchanged for millennia. Hierarchy is absolute, determined by proximity to the first progenitor. You exist outside that structure, powerful enough to challenge nobles but bound by none of our ancient laws. I have no interest in vampire politics. Your interests are irrelevant to them. Your existence alone is the threat." She glanced at him, her crimson eyes unreadable in the moonlight. "The council may demand your execution simply to maintain the established order." Naruto considered this calmly. "They can demand whatever they want. It doesn't mean they'll get it." A small smile touched Krul's lips. "No, I don't imagine they will. Still, we should prepare for conflict, political if possible, physical if necessary." When they reached Sanguinum, the atmosphere had noticeably shifted. Vampire nobles watched their passage with open suspicion, while common vampires whispered among themselves as Naruto and Krul walked past. News of the battle against the intruder had clearly spread, along with exaggerated accounts of Naruto's abilities. Rather than proceeding directly to the council chamber, Krul led them to her mansion. "We should refresh ourselves before facing the council," she explained. Appearing battle-worn would suggest vulnerability. In her private chambers, servants brought fresh attire for both of them, a new dress for Krul to replace her damaged one, and reinforced combat gear for Naruto that bore subtle vampire noble insignia. The message in the clothing choice was deliberate. Naruto might be unique, but he was aligned with Krul's house. As they prepared, Krul finally addressed what had clearly been on her mind during their return journey. "Your transformation during the battle," she said, watching him from across the room. "The blood chakra mode, as you called it. How much control did you maintain?" Naruto understood the underlying question. Was he a potential danger to Sanguinum if he lost control of his hybrid powers? "Complete control," he assured her. "Kurama and I have been partners for years. The vampire blood adds a new element, but the principles of controlling that power are similar to managing tailed beast chakra." She nodded, seemingly satisfied. "The council will ask the same question, though less directly. They'll be looking for any reason to classify you as a threat." "And what about you?" Naruto asked, his blue-crimson eyes meeting hers directly. "Do you see me as a threat?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications that extended beyond simple danger assessment. In the days since his transformation, our relationship had evolved from cautious alliance to something more complex, mutual respect certainly, growing trust perhaps, and something else neither had acknowledged openly. "I see you as a variable I failed to anticipate," Krul finally answered, her usual diplomatic precision giving way to unexpected candor. "You were meant to be an experiment, a source of information about dimensional threats and possibly a weapon against them. Your independent will and rapid adaptation to vampire abilities were unexpected." "Disappointed?" Naruto asked, genuinely curious. "No," her answer came without hesitation. "Merely recalibrating. In 8 centuries of existence, I've rarely been surprised. You've managed it several times in less than a week." Before Naruto could respond, a messenger arrived to summon them to the council chamber. The moment of unusual openness passed as Krul's expression returned to its regal impassivity. "Remember," she advised as they departed, "the council fears change above all else. Your very existence represents change they cannot control." The council chamber was fuller than during their previous appearance. All 13 thrones were now occupied, including those of progenitors who rarely attended proceedings in person. The gallery was packed with noble vampires, their crimson eyes fixed on Naruto with expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. Gilles raised his hand for silence as Naruto and Krul took their positions at the center of the chamber. "Third progenitor Krul Tepes," he began formally, "you have eliminated the interdimensional intruder as instructed. For this service, the council offers its acknowledgement." The carefully worded statement offered recognition without actual gratitude or praise. Krul inclined her head slightly. accepting the minimal acknowledgement with appropriate formality. However, Erd continued, his voice hardening, the manner in which the threat was neutralized has raised serious concerns. Reports indicate the use of powers that threaten the fundamental balance of our society. Lest Kar, the fifth progenitor, leaned forward on his throne. The hybrid displayed abilities beyond any authorized by this council. Witnesses describe a transformation that combined progenitor power with foreign energy in ways that could potentially rival the first himself. Murmurs spread through the assembled nobles at this statement. To suggest any being could approach the power of the first progenitor was tantamount to heresy in vampire society. The reports are exaggerated, Krul stated calmly. Naruto Uzumaki possesses unique abilities. Certainly, but they were necessary to address the interdimensional threat, a threat that would have consumed our world had it not been stopped. The threat itself resulted from dimensional tampering. Another progenitor pointed out, tampering that originated in the hybrid's world. I didn't create the rift, Naruto interjected, drawing all eyes to him. I pursued the being responsible through it, and now I've helped seal it and eliminate the immediate danger. You speak as if you expect gratitude, Lest said with open disdain. Your very presence disrupts millennia of established order. Farid Bhattori stepped forward from among the observing nobles, his perpetual smile wider than usual. If I may, honorable council, there is another matter that bears consideration. Our ancient texts speak of a prophecy, one that may be relevant to current events. Krul's eyes narrowed suspiciously. What prophecy? One recorded by the second progenitor himself during the early centuries, Farid replied. Producing an ancient scroll with theatrical flourish. It speaks of worlds in collision, and blood that bridges realities. Most interestingly, it mentions A.G. Olden Crimson Warrior who walks between worlds, neither vampire nor human, herald of great change. The chamber erupted in voices as nobles reacted to this revelation. Erd Gils silenced them with a sharp gesture, his expression darkening as he addressed Farid. You claim this prophecy refers to current events. The parallels are striking, Farid said with false modesty. Dimensional rifts, a hybrid being with golden crimson power. Threats from beyond our reality. The prophecy further states that this herald will either unite the sundered realms in harmony, or consume both in chaos. Convenient timing for this prophecy to surface, Krul noted coldly. I don't recall it being mentioned in any council proceedings during my centuries of service. It was considered obscure, possibly metaphorical, Farid explained smoothly. Until recent events gave it potential literal meaning. Naruto sensed the manipulation at work. Whether the prophecy was genuine or fabricated, Farid was using it to further his own agenda, though what that agenda might be remained unclear. Prophecy or not, Erd stated, restoring order to the proceedings, we must address the immediate concern. The hybrids. Power represents a potential threat to established order. The council must decide whether such a being can be permitted to exist outside our hierarchical structure. I have a name, Naruto said firmly. His patience with being discussed as an object wearing thin. And I have no interest in your vampire hierarchy or politics. My goal is to understand and repair the dimensional rifts, then return to my own world. His directness caused another stir among the nobles, unaccustomed to such blunt speech before the council. Krul shot him a warning glance, but he continued. Queen Krul saved my life when she could have let me die. In return, I've helped eliminate a threat to both our worlds. If that cooperation offends your sense of order, the problem lies with your order, not with me. The chamber fell silent at this challenge. Erd Gils studied Naruto with an expression that mixed outrage with reluctant respect. You speak boldly for one so young, he finally said. How old are you, Naruto Uzumaki? 22, Naruto answered. A ripple of amusement passed through the progenitors. To beings who had lived for millennia, he was little more than an infant. 22, Erd repeated. Avenue witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations 22 times over. Your perspective is limited by your brief existence. My age doesn't make me wrong, Naruto countered. Sometimes fresh eyes see clearer than ancient ones. Before Erd could respond, the chamber doors burst open. A vampire messenger rushed in, protocol forgotten in obvious urgency. Forgive the interruption, he gasped, bowing hastily. The human army has launched a major offensive against Sanguinum's outer defenses. They're using Seraph weapons, and they've breached the first perimeter. The council's focus immediately shifted from Naruto to this new threat. Erd rose from his throne, issuing commands with the authority of millennia. All noble houses will mobilize their forces. Secure the livestock districts first, then reinforce the perimeter defenses. He turned to Krul. Third Progenitor, this discussion is suspended until the immediate threat is addressed. You will assist in defending your territory. Krul bowed formally. As the council commands. As the chamber emptied, vampires rushing to battle stations throughout Sanguinum, Naruto and Krul exchanged glances. The human attack's timing was either incredibly fortunate or suspiciously convenient. The Japanese Imperial Demon Army rarely launches direct assaults on Sanguinum, Krul said as they moved toward the city's defensive positions. They lack numbers and power for sustained engagement. Unless they've developed new weapons, Naruto suggested. Are they desperate for some reason? Or they received intelligence about internal vampire conflicts that made this seem like an opportune moment to strike, Krul added, her implication clear. Ferret, Naruto guessed. Possibly. His games often extend in multiple directions simultaneously. They reached Sanguinum's upper level, where vampire soldiers were organizing defensive formations. Through tunnels connecting to the surface, Naruto could hear the sounds of battle, explosions, shouts. The distinctive energy discharge of cursed gear weapons. A vampire commander approached Krul, bowing hastily. My queen, the humans have deployed 3 Seraphs. They've broken through sectors 7 and 9. We're containing them, but casualties are significant. 3 Seraphs simultaneously. Krul's expression showed genuine concern. They've never managed more than 1 before. And they've got something new. The commander added grimly. Some kind of energy weapon that disrupts vampire regeneration. Wounds inflicted by it heal at human rates, if at all. Naruto and Krul exchanged glances. Both thinking the same thing. Dimensional energy. Somehow, the humans had harnessed power from the rifts. I'll handle the Seraphs, Krul decided. Naruto, assess this new weapon. If it's utilizing dimensional energy as we suspect, you're best equipped to counter it. They separated, each heading toward different sectors of the battlefield. As Naruto moved through Sanguinum's defensive tunnels toward Sector 9, he created shadow clones to gather intelligence from multiple areas simultaneously. The scene that greeted him at the breach point was chaotic. Human soldiers in black uniforms fought with disciplined coordination against vampire defenders. Their cursed gear weapons, demon-possessed tools that could harm vampires, glowed with familiar green energy. But some soldiers carried new weapons that pulsed with violet light identical to the dimensional rifts. A vampire noble fell nearby, struck by one of these weapons. The wound, a relatively minor hit to the shoulder that should have healed almost instantly, remained open. Bleeding steadily, the vampire's expression registered shock as much as pain. They've weaponized dimensional energy, ***, Kurama confirmed, his voice grim. Similar to how shinobi learned to weaponize natural chakra. But how? Naruto wondered. They couldn't have developed this technology in just a few days since the rifts appeared. One of his shadow clones dispersed, sending information directly to his consciousness. Humans in laboratory gear working frantically in a mobile facility just beyond the perimeter, adjusting equipment connected to what appeared to be a captured dimensional fragment. They found a rift fragment, Naruto realized. They're using it to power their weapons. He moved through the battle with hybrid speed, engaging human soldiers only when necessary and using non-lethal techniques to incapacitate rather than kill. His goal was the mobile lab, where the dimensional technology originated. Breaking through the human defensive line, Naruto encountered a squad of elite soldiers guarding the approach to the laboratory. Their leader, a young man with dark hair and determined eyes, stepped forward, sword glowing with curse energy. A new type of vampire. He called out, assessing Naruto's unusual appearance. Whatever you are, you won't stop humanity's advance. I'm not here to fight if I can avoid it, Naruto replied, raising his hands in a placating gesture. But you're using dimensional energy you don't understand. It's dangerous to both our worlds. The soldier's eyes narrowed suspiciously. Both worlds? What are you talking about? The rifts you're harvesting energy from, they connect to another dimension. My world. Weaponizing that energy could destabilize the barriers between realities. Uncertainty flickered across the soldier's face. But his training reasserted itself. Nice try, vampire. But we know what we're doing. The dimensional energy is humanity's key to freedom from your kind's oppression. He signaled his squad, and they attacked in coordinated formation. Naruto evaded, using minimal force to redirect rather than harm. These were soldiers following orders, not enemies he wished to destroy. Listen to me, he insisted, dodging a blade strike while gently disabling another soldier with a precise chakra tap. I'm not your enemy. The dimensional rifts are the real threat, to humans and vampires alike. Lies, the squad leader shouted, though Naruto detected hesitation in his voice. Vampires have enslaved humanity for years. We'll use any weapon necessary to free ourselves. There, fight was interrupted by a massive explosion from deeper within the human lines. Looking past the soldiers, Naruto saw a figure rising into the air, winged, radiant, and unmistakably one of the Seraphs the vampire commander had mentioned. Angel of Death, strike down the unclean. The Seraph's voice resonated with inhuman power as it raised a flaming sword. Fall back. The human squad leader ordered his men, recognizing the danger. Even their own Seraph weapons were difficult to control once activated. Naruto seized the moment of confusion to move past them, heading directly for the mobile laboratory. Inside, he found scientists working frantically around equipment connected to a violet crystal, unmistakably a fragment from a dimensional rift. Stop, he shouted, entering the facility. That crystal is unstable. You're risking catastrophic dimensional collapse. The scientists looked up in alarm, reaching for weapons. Naruto created shadow clones to disarm them while he approached the crystal containment unit. Listen to me, he said more calmly, addressing a woman who appeared to be the lead researcher. I understand these rifts better than anyone. That fragment isn't just a power source, it's a tear in reality itself. The more energy you draw from it, the more unstable it becomes. The scientist's eyes widened with recognition. You're not a vampire, she said. Not entirely. What are you? Someone who's seen what happens when dimensional boundaries collapse, Naruto answered. Your weapons are effective, but they're accelerating a process that could destroy both worlds. He could see calculation in her eyes, scientific curiosity warring with military objectives. Before she could respond, the facility shook violently as something massive struck nearby. The Seraph, she gasped. It's gone berserk. Naruto made a split-second decision. I'll handle the Seraph. You need to power down this equipment before the dimensional fragment destabilizes completely. Without waiting for her agreement, he rushed outside to find the battlefield transformed into chaos. The Seraph, a transformed human with 6 wings of light and glowing eyes, hovered above the fighting, attacking both humans and vampires indiscriminately. All sinners shall be purified, it intoned, voice echoing with unnatural harmonics. Cleansing fire shall consume the unworthy. In the distance, Naruto Cool sensed Krul engaging another Seraph near Sanguinum's main entrance. The third was moving through the city's residential district, causing panic among the human livestock children. This is bad timing, Kit, Kurama observed. We're still recovering from the dimensional battle earlier. No choice, Naruto replied internally. If these Seraphs go unchecked, the casualties will be enormous. He activated his blood chakra mode. Golden crimson energy erupting around him as vampire wings formed from solidified blood. The transformation drew the Seraph's attention immediately. Abomination, it declared, turning toward him. Neither angel nor demon, neither human nor vampire. You shall be the first to fall. I've been called worse, Naruto replied, ascending to meet the Seraph in midair. And I'm not falling today. Their clash sent shockwaves across the battlefield, drawing all eyes upward. The Seraph's flaming sword met Naruto's blood chakra claws, energy discharges illuminating night sky with competing colors, divine gold against hybrid crimson gold. Below, human soldiers and vampire defenders momentarily ceased fighting, united in awe at the aerial battle. The Seraph fought with mechanical precision, each movement perfect but predictable. Naruto countered with shinobi adaptability, combining vampire speed with shadow clone tactics to confuse his opponent. You cannot defeat divine judgment, the Seraph declared, unleashing a wave of purifying light that dispelled Naruto's shadow clones. You're not divine, Naruto countered, forming a blood Rasengan in his palm. You're a human modified with angel DNA. And you're being used as a weapon against your will. The Seraph hesitated for a fraction of a second, enough for Naruto to close the distance and strike, not with the Rasengan, but with a modified seal tag infused with calming chakra. The tag adhered to the Seraph's forehead, disrupting the connection between human host and angelic possession. Return to yourself, Naruto commanded, channeling chakra through the seal. Remember who you are. The Seraph convulsed midair, light flickering as the human consciousness fought to reassert control. Wings began to dissolve, the flaming sword extinguished, and the glowing eyes dimmed to reveal normal human irises filled with confusion. As the transformation reversed, the human, a young man no older than 16, began to fall. Naruto caught him, descending gently to the ground between the battle lines. Human soldiers and vampire defenders watched in stunned silence as he set the unconscious boy down. He needs medical attention, Naruto announced to the nearest human squad. The Seraph transformation puts enormous strain on the human body. A female officer stepped forward cautiously. Who are you? What did you do to him? I suppressed the angelic possession temporarily, Naruto explained. He's still a Seraph, but the human consciousness is back in control. Across the battlefield, explosions indicated that Krul was still engaged with another Seraph. Naruto turned in that direction, preparing to assist, when the ground beneath them trembled violently. The dimensional fragment, he realized with alarm. The lab. He rushed back to the mobile laboratory to find it enveloped in violet light. The scientists had heeded his warning and were attempting to shut down their equipment, but the process had triggered instability in the rift fragment. It's cascading, the lead researcher shouted when she saw Naruto. We can't contain it. The crystal pulsed with increasing intensity, cracks spreading across its surface as dimensional energy leaked into the surrounding area. Reality itself seemed to waver, objects phasing in and out of existence as the boundaries between worlds thinned. Naruto assessed the situation quickly. The fragment was too unstable for conventional sealing techniques. It would shatter before a proper seal could be established. But perhaps absorption might work, Kurama suggested. Following his thought process, your hybrid nature allows you to process dimensional energy differently than either humans or vampires. It was risky. Absorbing raw dimensional energy could overwhelm even his enhanced system. But the alternative was a catastrophic collapse that would consume the battlefield and everyone on it. Naruto approached the pulsing crystal, hands extended. Everyone out, he ordered the scientists. I'm going to attempt to stabilize it, but I don't know what will happen. They evacuated hastily, leaving him alone with the increasingly unstable fragment. In blood chakra mode, Naruto could see the dimensional energy more clearly, currents of power flowing between realities, connections stretching across the void to his home world. Here goes nothing, he muttered, placing his palms directly on the crystal. The energy surge was immediate and overwhelming. Dimensional power flooded his system, threatening to tear him apart from the inside. Naruto gritted his teeth, channeling the energy through his chakra network, using techniques he developed to handle Kurama's more volatile manifestations. Root it through the seal matrix, Kurama instructed. His own chakra adapting to help process the foreign power. Your Uzumaki heritage gives you natural affinity for containing volatile energy. Naruto followed Kurama's guidance, using his blood and chakra to create internal pathways for the dimensional energy. The crystal began to stabilize as he absorbed its excess power, the violent pulsing gradually subsiding to a more rhythmic glow. When the immediate danger had passed, Naruto carefully placed a containment seal on the now stable fragment. His body hummed with absorbed dimensional energy, giving his blood chakra mode a new aspect, streaks of violet intermingling with the gold and crimson. Outside, the battle had largely paused, both sides regrouping after the Seraph's neutralization. Naruto emerged from the laboratory to find the human commander and several vampire nobles facing off in an uneasy standoff. The dimensional weapon has been neutralized, he announced, approaching the gap between forces. The immediate danger to both sides has passed. The human commander, an older man with stern features and a uniform adorned with medals, studied Naruto with suspicious fascination. You're the one who stopped the Seraph, he stated. And saved my research team. Yet you bear vampire traits. Explain yourself. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I'm from another dimension, the one your rifts connect to. I'm neither fully human nor vampire. But I have no interest in your war. My concern is preventing dimensional collapse that would destroy both worlds. The commander's eyes narrowed skeptically, but before he could respond, Krul appeared beside Naruto in a blur of motion. Her dress was torn in places, evidence of her battle with the second Seraph, but she appeared otherwise unharmed. General Hiragi, she acknowledged. The human commander with cold formality. Your attack was ambitious but ultimately futile. Withdraw your forces, and we will allow your wounded to leave unmolested. Queen Krul Tepes, the general replied with equal coldness. Your offer is noted, but this engagement has yielded valuable data regardless of its immediate outcome. His gaze returned to Naruto, including confirmation that dimensional travelers exist. Our seers spoke true. This statement caught both Naruto and Krul by surprise. Your seers? Krul asked sharply. The Order of the Imperial Moon has prophets who foresaw the coming. G of a golden crimson warrior from beyond our world, the general explained. They predicted dimensional rifts and powers that would change the balance between humans and vampires. Naruto exchanged a glance with Krul, both thinking of Farad's convenient prophecy before the council. Interesting timing for prophecies to surface, Naruto commented. Quite, Krul agreed, her suspicion evident. General Hiragi signaled his officers. We will withdraw as suggested. But know this, Queen Tepes, the balance of power is shifting. Your hybrid ally proves that vampire and human can be something more together than apart. That knowledge alone makes this engagement a victory for humanity. As the human forces began their tactical retreat, collecting wounded and equipment, Krul turned to Naruto with intense scrutiny. You've changed, she observed, noting the violet streaks that now appeared in his hybrid aura. The dimensional energy, you absorbed it. It was the only way to stabilize the fragment, Naruto explained. Kurama helped me process it, but it's definitely altered something in my system. Another unprecedented development, she said, though her tone carried more fascination than concern. Come, we should return to Sanguinum. The council will be most interested in these events. As they made their way back to the vampire city, passing through scenes of battle aftermath, Naruto noted that vampire nobles watched him with new expressions, less hostility now, more calculation and even grudging respect. His actions during the battle had been witnessed by many, his willingness to protect both humans and vampires from the berserk Seraph noted. The political landscape has shifted, Krul commented, observing the same reactions. Your intervention against the Seraph and the Dime Nsional weapon has changed how the nobility perceives you. I wasn't thinking about politics, Naruto replied honestly. Just preventing unnecessary casualties, which is precisely why it was effective, she said with a small smile. Calculated political maneuvers are expected. Genuine concern for all parties involved is unusual in our world. When they reached Sanguinum's central district, He found Crowley Usford waiting with a formal message. The council requested their presence immediately. The summons carried a different tone than before, not an interrogation, but a strategic consultation. In the council chamber, only the highest-ranking progenitors remained. Giles, Lestkar, and 3 others whose names Naruto hadn't learned. The gallery stood empty, this meeting apparently closed to general nobility. The human attack has been repelled, stated without preamble when they entered. Largely due to your interventions. The council acknowledges this service to Sanguinum. The acknowledgement, while still formal, carried more genuine recognition than before. The Seraphs have been neutralized, Krul reported. 2 returned to human form when subdued, the 3rd was destroyed when it resisted containment. And the dimensional weapon, Lest inquired, his youthful face belying ancient calculation. Stabilized, Naruto answered. The humans were harnessing energy from a rift fragment. But they couldn't control it properly. The technology has been neutralized. He omitted the detail about absorbing the energy himself, unsure how the council would react to this further evolution of his hybrid abilities. Studied them both with intensity that seemed to see through partial truths. The human general mentioned prophecies about dimensional travelers. Prophecies that mirror what Farad Bhattori presented to this council. A curious coincidence, Krul noted with deliberate understatement. Perhaps not coincidence at all, Erd replied. Farid Badauri has been detained for questioning regarding possible communication with human forces. His involvement in these matters appears more complex than initially apparent. This was unexpected news. Naruto had sensed Farid's manipulative nature. But direct collusion with humans suggested a game with higher stakes than mere political maneuvering. The council has reached a decision regarding your status, Erd continued, addressing Naruto directly. The hybrid being known as Naruto Uzumaki is formally recognized as an independent entity allied with Sanguinum. Neither subject to vampire hierarchy nor bound by traditional restrictions, but accorded privileges and responsibilities commensurate with noble status. It was a diplomatic solution, acknowledging Naruto's unique position without forcing him into vampire societal structures. The compromise suggested significant deliberation and pragmatism from beings not known for either when it came to their ancient protocols. Furthermore, Erd added, turning to Krul, Third Progenitor Tepes is tasked with ongoing research into dimensional phenomena, with full authority to utilize the hybrid's abilities in service to this mission. The council expects regular reports on your findings. Krul bowed formally. The council's wisdom is acknowledged. This arrangement is provisional, lest interjected, unwilling to appear completely conciliatory. Should evidence emerge that dimensional instability threatens Sanguinum, or that the hybrid poses a danger to vampire society, the council reserves the right to revise its position. Understood, Naruto replied, recognizing the implicit threat beneath the diplomatic language. As they left the council chamber, Naruto sensed a shift in Krul's demeanor, a subtle relaxation of tension she'd carried since his transformation. That went better than expected, he commented, echoing her earlier words. Indeed, the council rarely modifies its position so dramatically in a single session. The human attack may have inadvertently secured your position by demonstrating your value. And yours, Naruto added. They've essentially authorized your continued experiment, with official blessing. A small smile touched her lips. Politics sometimes yields unexpected benefits. They returned to Krul's mansion, both in need of recovery after the intense events of the day. Servants brought blood for Krul and a specialized mixture for Naruto, human blood infused with nutrients that helped stabilize his hybrid physiology. In Krul's private study, they reviewed what they'd learned. The emergence of matching prophecies in both vampire and human societies suggested deliberate manipulation rather than coincidence. Farid's detention offered potential answers, but Naruto suspected the ancient vampire was merely one piece in a larger puzzle. The dimensional rifts are still the primary concern, he noted, studying a map where they'd marked known anomalies. My temporary seals will hold for perhaps 5 more days, but after that, instability will resume. And the fragment the humans were using. Contained for now, but it's evidence that others might be scattered throughout the city. Each one is a potential weapon or dimensional weakness. Krul nodded thoughtfully. We should locate and secure them all before either humans or opportunistic vampires can exploit them. As they discussed strategy, Naruto became increasingly aware of the absorbed dimensional energy circulating through his system. It wasn't painful, but it created a strange resonance with certain locations marked on their map, as if the energy within him recognized corresponding sources outside. I think I can track the fragments, he realized. The dimensional energy I absorbed acts like a compass pointing toward similar energy signatures. Convenient, Krul observed, though I wonder about the long-term effects of this absorption on your physiology. Kurama's monitoring it. So far, it seems to be integrating with my hybrid nature rather than disrupting it. More than integrating, Kurama added privately. It's enhancing our connection to both worlds simultaneously. You exist in a quantum state between realities now. This information gave Naruto pause. What does that mean for our eventual return home? Complicated. Kurama admitted. You could potentially travel between dimensions at will once you master this energy. But your existence is now linked to both worlds in ways I don't fully understand yet. Naruto kept this development to himself for the moment, unsure of its implications. Instead, he focused on the immediate plan to secure dimensional fragments. We should begin tomorrow, he suggested to Krul. Start with the strongest signatures and work our way down. She agreed, but as she studied the map, her expression grew distant. Contemplative in a way he hadn't seen before. What is it? He asked. These prophecies, she said after a moment. Whether fabricated or genuine, they speak of Ge, fundamental change to the relationship between humans and vampires. After centuries of stagnation, such change seems inconceivable. Change is the only constant, Naruto replied. In my world, we had thousand-year conflicts that eventually found resolution. Nothing is truly permanent, not even immortal vampire society. Perhaps. She looked up from the map, her crimson eyes meeting his with unusual directness. What would your world's solution be to the human-vampire conflict? The question surprised him with its earnestness. Cooperation based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation, he answered honestly. Humans need protection in this post-apocalyptic world, vampires need blood. A symbiotic relationship rather than a predator-prey dynamic. Idealistic, she commented, though without dismissal. But practical, he countered. The current system breeds resentment that manifests as weapons research, Seraph development, and military attacks. Both sides expend enormous resources, maintaining a status quo that satisfies neither. Krul was silent for a long moment, considering his words with uncharacteristic openness. In 8 centuries, I've never questioned the fundamental nature of vampire dominance. She finally admitted. It simply was. Like gravity or time, sometimes it takes an outside perspective to see alternatives to what's always been, Naruto said gently. Their conversation was interrupted by a servant announcing an unexpected visitor, Farid Badori, newly released from council detention. Krul's expression immediately hardened into regal impassivity as she authorized his entry. Farid appeared at the study door with his usual theatrical grace, though Naruto noted subtle signs of strain beneath his carefully maintained facade. Whatever questioning he'd endured had not been entirely pleasant, even for a noble of his standing. My queen, he greeted Krul with an elaborate bow. And the dimensional hero, how delightful to find you both together. You were detained for suspected collusion with humans, Krul stated coldly. Yet here you stand, apparently exonerated. Explain. Farid's smile remained fixed as he spread his hands in a gesture of innocence. A misunderstanding, nothing more. The council found insufficient evidence of deliberate betrayal, merely overzealous information gathering. The matching prophecies, Naruto asked directly. An intriguing coincidence, Farid replied smoothly, though I admit to being somewhat liberal in my translation of ancient texts. Poetic license, you might say. Krul's eyes narrowed dangerously. You falsified a prophecy and presented it to the council as genuine. Falsified is such a harsh term, Farid protested with mock hurt. I merely emphasized certain elements that seemed relevant to current circumstances. To what end? Naruto pressed, sensing layers of deception beneath Farid's casual admission. Why? To ensure your survival, of course. Farid's smile widened at their evident surprise. The council was prepared to order your destruction as a threat to vampire hierarchy. By introducing the prophecy, I created doubt. Might this hybrid be the foretold harbinger of change? Rather than a simple aberration to be eliminated. Neither Naruto nor Krul trusted this explanation. Farid Badori did nothing without personal benefit, and the humans coincidentally developed the same prophecy. Krul asked skeptically. Information flows in many directions, Farid replied vaguely. What matters is the outcome. Our dimensional friend lives, you retain your position and authority, and most importantly, research into these fascinating rifts continues unimpeded. He approached the map on Krul's table, studying the marked anomalies with evident interest. You plan to collect the dimensional fragments. How proactive of you. The council will be pleased with such initiative. Your approval is neither sought nor valued, Farid, Krul stated flatly. State your actual purpose in coming here. His smile dimmed slightly, a more calculating expression taking its place. Very well. Direct as always, my queen. I came to offer information the council does not possess regarding the true nature of the dimensional rifts. What information? Naruto asked, instantly alert. These rifts aren't random tears between dimensions, Farid explained, his usual theatricality giving way to unexpected seriousness. They follow a pattern, a deliberate design established centuries ago when the first progenitor conducted his own experiments in dimensional travel. Impossible, Krul dismissed immediately. The first disappeared over a millennium ago. These rifts only appeared days ago. The first laid the groundwork, magical anchors at specific locations throughout what would become Tokyo. Dormant until activated by the right catalyst. Farid's gaze shifted meaningfully to Naruto. A catalyst-like dimensional energy from another world interacting with progenitor blood. The implications were staggering. If true, it suggested that Naruto's transformation had inadvertently activated ancient vampire magic designed for interdimensional travel. You expect us to believe that first progenitor predicted dimensional travelers? Krul asked, skepticism evident. Not predicted. Invited, Farid corrected. The anchors were beacons, calling across dimensions. For what purpose, even I don't know with certainty. But the pattern of rifts matches exactly the ritual sites documented in texts from the First's era. Naruto studied the map with new perspective. The dimensional anomaly did form a pattern when viewed collectively, a complex array similar to advanced sealing formulas from his world. Why share this information now? He asked Farid directly. Because the pattern is nearing completion, Farid replied. His playful demeanor entirely gone. When all fragments are gathered in their proper locations, whether by you or others, something will happen. Something even I cannot predict with confidence. And that concerns you? Krul asked, surprised by his apparent sincerity. I've existed for nearly as long as you, Krul. I've grown rather attached to this world, despite its many flaws. Dimensional collapse would be inconvenient for my ongoing plans. Naruto sensed that while Farid was certainly withholding information, his concern about the rifts was genuine. Self-interest rather than altruism motivated him, but the alignment of goals created a temporary basis for cooperation. If what you say is true, Naruto said, then gathering the fragments could either prevent disaster or trigger it. Depending on how they're handled. Precisely, Farid confirmed. Which is why I suggest a more cautious approach than simply collecting them. Each fragment should be died in its original location before any attempt at removal or containment. Krul's expression remained suspicious. And you're offering to assist in this research, I presume. I have access to texts regarding the First's experiments that even the Council doesn't possess, Farid replied with a small shrug. A habit of collecting obscure knowledge over centuries. Quite useful in situations like this. The offer created a dilemma. Farid Bhattori was manipulative and self-serving, yet his knowledge could prove essential in addressing the dimensional crisis. Trusting him was dangerous, but ignoring his information might be catastrophic. We'll consider your offer, Krul finally stated, neither accepting nor rejecting outright. But know this, Farid, if I discover you're manipulating these events for personal gain at the expense of Sanguinum's safety, not even your ancient lineage will protect you from my retribution. Farid bowed with theatrical flourish, his smile returning. Understood perfectly, my queen. I'll await your decision. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and congratulations on your ascension, Naruto Uzumaki. The nobility is abuzz with speculation about your unique status. Do try not to disappoint them. They so rarely encounter genuine novelty in their tedious immortal existence. After he departed, Krul and Naruto exchanged troubled glances. Can any of what he said be verified? Naruto asked. Partially, Krul replied, moving to a concealed bookshelf that slid aside to reveal a hidden archive. I have some texts regarding the First's experiments, though less than Farid claims to possess. Most records from that era were deliberately obscured after the First's disappearance. She selected several ancient volumes, their bindings cracked with age despite careful preservation. These will take time to translate fully. They're written in a vampire script that predates modern languages. I can help with my shadow clones, Naruto offered. They can process information independently, multiplying our research capacity. Krul accepted his offer with a nod of appreciation. For the next several hours, they worked in focused collaboration, Krul translating passages while Naruto's clones organized and cross-referenced information. The research revealed disturbing correlations that supported parts of Farid's claim. The rift locations did indeed correspond to sites mentioned in ancient vampire rituals. The First was obsessed with transcending dimensions, Krul summarized as midnight approached. These texts describe his belief that vampire essence originated from beyond our reality, that progenitors were themselves dimensional travelers who became stranded in this world eons ago. That would explain the compatibility between progenitor blood and dimensional energy, Naruto observed, and why my transformation created such unique effects. As they continued working, Naruto became increasingly aware of Krul's proximity, her scent, the grace precision of her movements as she handled the ancient texts, the occasional brush of her hand against his when they reached for the same document. Despite her childlike appearance, her presence carried centuries of accumulated knowledge and power that he found increasingly fascinating. For her part, Krul seemed similarly aware of him, her crimson eyes lingering on his face when she thought he wasn't looking. Studying his reactions to new information with interest that transcended mere scientific curiosity. When they finally paused their research, the first hints of dawn approaching in the world above, Krul closed the ancient tome she'd been examining and turned to face him directly. "You should rest," she said. "Absorbing dimensional energy and battling Seraphs in the same day requires recovery. Even for your hybrid physiology." "What about you?" Naruto asked. "Do progenitors need rest?" "Less than younger vampires, but yes, we require periods of restoration." A small smile touched her lips. Especially after fighting enhanced angels and engaging in dimensional research. As they organized the research materials for continued examination later, Naruto found himself addressing a question that had lingered since their initial meeting. "Why did you save me?" he asked. "When we first met in the ruins, you could have let me die or simply finished me off yourself. Instead, you gave me your blood, something you've said is rarely done." Krul paused, considering the question with uncharacteristic openness. "Initial scientific curiosity, perhaps. Your energy was unlike anything I'd encountered in centuries of existence. And now," Naruto pressed gently, her crimson eyes met his, something vulnerable flickering behind their ancient depths. "Now, it has become more complex. You challenge assumptions I've held for longer than human nations have existed. You see possibilities where I had accepted immutable reality." She looked away, resuming her organization of the texts. "It's unsettling, but not unwelcome." The admission, modest as it was, represented significant personal disclosure from someone who had maintained careful control for centuries. Naruto recognized the importance of the moment, respecting her boundaries while acknowledging the shifting nature of their relationship. "For what it's worth," he offered, "I'm grateful, not just for the life-saving blood, but for your guidance since. This world would have been impossible to navigate alone." A comfortable silence fell between them as they completed their task. When Krul escorted him to the guest chambers that had become his de facto residence within her mansion, there was a new quality to their interaction, less formal, more genuinely connected. "Tomorrow we begin tracking the fragments," she said at the doorway. "Your ability to sense them will be essential. And what about Farid's offer of assistance?" "We'll use his information but maintain our own interpretations," she decided. Farid Batho. Rai never reveals all he knows, only what serves his immediate purpose. Naruto nodded agreement. "Reminds me of Orochimaru from my world, brilliant but fundamentally self-serving." An apt comparison, I suspect. She turned to leave, then hesitated. "Naruto, your perspective on vampire-human relations. Is it truly possible, cooperation rather than dominance?" The question carried weight beyond academic discussion. It represented potential willingness to consider change on a fundamental level. "It won't be easy," he answered honestly. "Centuries of established patterns don't transform overnight. But yes, I believe it's possible. Both sides have something the other needs, and neither benefits from perpetual conflict." Krul nodded thoughtfully. "Rest well. Tomorrow will bring new challenges." As she departed, Naruto sensed that their conversation had shifted something significant between them, not just in their working relationship, but in Krul's own centuries-old perspective. Small changes perhaps, but with immortal beings, even incremental shifts could eventually redirect the course of civilizations. In his chambers, as he prepared for rest, Naruto contacted Kurama in their shared mindscape. "You're developing feelings for the vampire queen, ****, Kurama observed without preamble, his massive form lounging in the modified space that now incorporated elements of both shinobi and vampire energy. "Is it that obvious?" Naruto asked, not bothering to deny it. "To me, yes. Your emotional responses are quite literally part of our shared consciousness." The fox's tail swished lazily. It's an unexpected complication to our dimensional predicament. Yeah, I know, Naruto sighed, sitting cross-legged before his longtime partner. This was supposed to be a simple mission: chase down a thief, recover stolen artifacts, return to Konoha. Now you're a vampire shinobi hybrid with growing attachment to a millennia-old vampire queen in an alternate dimension, ***, Kurama finished dryly. ***, simple, left the equation some time ago. What do you think about her? Naruto asked, genuinely curious about his partner's perspective. Kurama considered the question seriously. She's intelligent, pragmatic, and capable of growth despite centuries of calcified thinking. Her power rivals that of a tailed beast, though expressed differently. Most importantly, she treats you as an equal rather than a curiosity or tool. High praise coming from you. Don't mistake assessment for endorsement, ***, Kurama rumbled, though without real irritation. The complications remain significant. We still have responsibilities in our world. Friends, commitments. I know, Naruto acknowledged. And I haven't forgotten them. But this dimensional situation isn't simple. Whatever the first progenitor was planning with these rifts, it's connected to both worlds now. We can't just leave it unresolved. And that's the only reason you're considering staying longer? Kurama asked skeptically. Naruto smiled ruefully. No, but it's a legitimate one. Fair enough. The fox stretched and repositioned himself. For what it's worth, the dimensional energy you absorb, is creating interesting possibilities. Your connection to both worlds is strengthening rather than weakening. Given time and practice, you might eventually move between them at will. This information provided new perspective. Not an either or choice between worlds, but potentially the ability to maintain connections to both. One problem at a time, Naruto decided. First we secure the diamond sional fragments and prevent whatever cataclysm Ferret is worried about. Then we figure out the long-term implications. As he drifted toward sleep, Naruto's thoughts returned to Krul, her unexpected vulnerability when discussing change. The growing trust between them, the subtle shifts in how they interacted. In centuries of existence, she had likely formed few genuine connections, vampire society being built on power hierarchies rather than emotional bonds. Perhaps that was changing now. For both of them, morning brought renewed focus to their mission. Naruto and Krul departed Sanguinum at first light, moving through the ruins of Tokyo with purpose. Using his ability to sense dimensional energy, Naruto led them toward the strongest fragment signature, located in what had once been a university research facility. The humans haven't found this one yet, he observed as they approached the partially collapsed building. The signature is undisturbed. Good, Krul replied, surveying the area with cautious attention. According to the texts we examined, this location corresponds to one of the first's primary ritual sites. They entered the facility carefully, proceeding through debris-strewn corridors toward the source of dimensional energy. Naruto's enhanced senses detected no immediate threats, no human patrols, no vampire sentries beyond those Krul had stationed at a respectful distance to ensure privacy for their investigation. The fragment revealed itself in what had once been a physics laboratory, a shard of crystalline material approximately the size of a human hand, pulsing with violet light as it hovered a few inches above a cracked marble countertop. Unlike the violent energy of the rift itself, the fragment emitted a steady, almost harmonious vibration. It's more stable than the one the humans were using, Naruto noted, approaching carefully. Almost as if it's meant to be found. Krul studied the fragment with analytical precision. The texts mentioned resonance between sites, each fragment calling to the others, creating a network across dimensions. Using shadow clones to establish a perimeter, Naruto examined the fragment more closely. The dimensional energy within him responded to the shard's presence, creating a subtle resonance that felt almost like recognition. I can feel its purpose, he said, surprised by the clarity of the impression. It's not just a piece of the rift, it's a component in a larger system. Like a node in a communication network. Can you discern what it communicates with? Krul asked. Naruto closed his eyes, allowing he absorbed dimensional energy to guide his perceptions. Other fragments primarily, but also, something else. Something in my world, I think. The impression is familiar but distant. He carefully extended his hand toward the fragment, not touching it but allowing energy to flow between them. Images flickered through his mind. Landscapes from his world, particular locations that held significance, the Valley of the End. The ruins of Uzushiogakure, the Sage of Six Paths, Temple. The first was targeting specific locations in my dimension, Naruto realized, opening his eyes. Places of power as associated with the Sage of Six Paths and the Otsutsuki clan. The originators of chakra in your world, Krul recalled from their previous discussions. Yes, and if the first believed vampires originated from beyond this dimension, he may have been searching for their true origin point, Krul concluded. Attempting to establish connection with whatever realm progenitors came from originally. The implications were profound. If the first progenitor had been mapping connections to the chakra world, it suggested possible common ancestry between vampire progenitors and the Otsutsuki clan, Diamonds. Ional travelers who harvested life energy across realities. We should document this fragment exactly as we found it, Naruto suggested. Position, orientation, energy signature, everything before we attempt to move or contain it. Krul agreed, producing specialized equipment from a pack she carried. Together they recorded precise measurements and energy readings, Naruto's shadow clones assisting WITH multiple angles of observation simultaneously. When they had gathered sufficient data, the question of what to do with the fragment remained. Farid had cautioned against moving them from their original locations. But leaving them unguarded presented its own risks. I could place a sealing barrier around it, Naruto proposed. Something that would allow it to maintain its position in the network while preventing unauthorized access. Proceed, Krul decided after considering the options. But maintain connection to the fragment through your absorbed energy. If anything changes in the network, we need to know immediately. Naruto created a specialized sealing barrier using combined chakra and vampire blood techniques. The seal allowed the fragment's energy to continue its connection with other nodes while establishing a protective perimeter that would alert them to any disturbance. As he completed the seal, something unexpected happened. The fragment pulsed brightly, and corresponding G-flashes appeared at various points throughout the city, visible even at distance, violet beacons momentarily illuminating the ruins of Tokyo. The network is acknowledging the seal, Naruto observed with surprise. It's accepting it as part of the system. Remarkable, Krul murmured. The first's technology recognizes your hybrid energy as compatible. They proceeded to the next fragment location, finding a similar crystal embedded in the foundation of what had once been a Shinto shrine. Again, Naruto sensed purpose in its placement. The shrine had been built on a natural convergence of ley lines, enhancing the fragment's connection to the dimensional network. Throughout the day, they located and secured 7 fragments, each corresponding to locations from the first's ritual texts. CH placement revealed further evidence of deliberate design, a vast array spanning Tokyo that, when mapped, created a pattern similar to advanced Uzumaki sealing formulas. By sunset, they had compiled substantial data on the fragment network, returning to Sanguinum to analyze their findings. In Krul's study, they expanded their map to include the newly documented locations, the pattern growing more apparent with each addition. It's a summoning array, Naruto realized as they completed the updated map. Similar to techniques used to call entities across dimensional boundaries in my world. But on a massive scale, city-wide rather than room-sized. What would the first be attempting to summon? Krul wondered, studying the pattern with growing concern. Not what, who, came a voice from the doorway. Farid Badori stood there, his usual smile tempered by uncharacteristic seriousness. He was trying to summon himself back from wherever he vanished to a millennium ago. Krul's eyes narrowed dangerously. You entered without permission, Farid. Forgive the intrusion, he replied, bowing slightly. But time grows short. I've been monitoring the network's energy fluctuations. Your activities today have accelerated the activation sequence. Explain, Krul demanded. Farid approached the map, pointing to the pattern they'd documented. The first didn't disappear, he transcended. His final ritual was an attempt to evolve beyond vampire limitations by entering what he called the realm between realms. But something went wrong. He became trapped in dimensional limbo, neither here nor fully gone. And these fragments are his way back? Naruto asked. Beacons to guide his return, Farad confirmed. But a millennium in dimensional limbo changes even a progenitor. What returns may not be what departed. You've known this all along, Krul accused, anger evident in her crimson eyes. You've manipulated events to accelerate the process. Not accelerate. Guide, Farad corrected. The first's return is inevitable. The catalyst, he nodded toward Naruto, has already activated the sequence. My concern is ensuring what returns doesn't destroy everything in the process. The admission was more candid than anything they'd heard from Farad previously. Naruto studied him carefully, sensing something beyond the vampire's usual manipulative facade, genuine concern, perhaps even fear. You're afraid of the first, Naruto observed. Any sane being would be, Farad replied without his customary deflection. Even before his transcendence experiment, he wielded power that made other progenitors seem like children in comparison. After 1,000 years absorbing dimensional energy, he'll be closer to a god than a vampire. Krul's expression darkened with realization. The prophecies, H versions, were preparations for his return. Your way of ensuring cooperation without revealing the full truth. Would you have believed me? Farad asked simply. Would the council or the humans have accepted that the first progenitor was attempting to return through dimensional rifts? Or would they have accused me of heresy and delusion? It was a valid point. The politics of both vampire and man societies made direct disclosure problematic. But manipulation had its own consequences. What happens now? Naruto asked, focusing on the immediate concern. If the activation sequence has accelerated, how much time do we have? 3 days at most, Farad estimated. Each fragment you secured today aligned more perfectly with the array pattern. The dimensional barriers are thinning at an increasing rate. Can it be stopped? Krul demanded. Stopped? No. Modified? Perhaps. Farad pointed to specific locations on the map. These 3 nodes are crucial to the return process. By adjusting their resonance frequencies, we might influence how the first manifests, providing a stable pathway rather than a chaotic eruption. And if we destroy the fragments instead? Naruto suggested. Farad shook his head emphatically. Catastrophic dimensional collapse. The energy would release uncontrolled, tearing apart both connected worlds. The network must be completed and stabilized, not dismantled. The situation presented a troubling dilemma. Allowing the first's return risked introducing an entity of godlike power with unknown intentions. Attempting to prevent it risked destroying both worlds in the process. There's another option, Naruto said after considering the problem. We create a controlled gateway, something that allows communication before full manifestation. We speak with the first, understand his intentions, then decide whether to complete the process. A diplomatic approach. Farad seemed genuinely surprised. How refreshingly human. Is it possible? Krul asked, considering the suggestion. Theoretically, Farad admitted. The final 3 nodes create the actual passage. If modified correctly, they could establish communication without full materialization. I can adapt Uzumaki sealing techniques to create that kind of dimensional buffer, Naruto offered. Combined with the vampire ritual components, it should work. They spent hours refining the approach. Farad providing details from his collection of the first's writings while Naruto and Krul developed the technical modifications needed. The plan took shape. They would secure the final 3 fragments tomorrow. Modify them with specialized seals, then attempt communication with the entity in dimensional limbo, the first progenitor, before deciding whether to complete or terminate the return process. When the planning concluded, Farad departed with uncharacteristic formality, agreeing to provide additional texts that might aid their preparations. After he left, Krul turned to Naruto with evident concern. Do you trust his information? She asked directly. Not entirely, Naruto admitted. But the pattern we've documented independently supports key elements of his explanation. The fragments do form a summoning array, and it is activating progressively as we secure them. The first progenitor returning, Krul murmured, a complex mixture of emotions crossing her features. After a millennium of absence, during which vampire society built elaborate hierarchies based on proximity to his original power, his actual presence would upend everything. You knew him? Naruto asked, realizing he'd never questioned how old Krul actually was. Briefly, she acknowledged, I was young when he conducted his final experiment, barely a century into my existence as a vampire. He was magnificent and terrible, brilliant beyond comprehension but utterly detached from conventional morality or concern. Like the Otsutsuki in my world, Naruto observed, viewing lesser beings as mere resources or obstacles. Yes, Krul agreed, which makes your diplomatic approach both admirable and potentially naive. The first viewed even other progenitors as pieces in his grand design. Humans were less than insects to him. People can change, Naruto said, even ancient, powerful beings. Kurama did. Don't compare me to some dimensional vampire god, asterisk asterisk, Kurama grumbled internally, though without real heat. A millennium in isolation might have altered his perspective, Naruto continued. Either way, establishing communication before full manifestation gives us options that simple resistance doesn't. Krul studied him with an expression he couldn't fully interpret, something between admiration and concern. Your optimism is either your greatest strength or a dangerous weakness. I haven't decided which. Why not both? Naruto suggested with a small smile. She returned the smile briefly before her expression turned serious again. If this fails, if the first returns with destructive intent, both our worlds face existential threat. Are you prepared for what might be necessary in that scenario? The question carried heavy implication. If diplomacy failed, they might need to take drastic action, potentially sacrificing themselves to prevent greater catastrophe. I've faced world-ending threats before, Naruto replied quietly. I'll do whatever's necessary to protect both dimensions. Krul nodded, apparently satisfied with his resolve. Then we should rest. Tomorrow will demand our full strength and focus. As she turned to leave the study, Naruto reached out, gently catching her hand. A bold gesture given vampire protocols regarding physical contact with progenitors. She paused, looking at their joined hands with surprise rather than offense. Whatever happens, he said earnestly, I'm glad I landed in your territory when I came through that rift. Anyone else would have killed me outright or experimented on me like a lab specimen. You gave me a chance to be a partner rather than a subject. The vulnerability in his statement hung between them, more significant than any tactical planning they'd done. For a moment, Krul seemed uncertain how to respond, emotions she'd kept carefully controlled for centuries threatening to surface. Your perspective has been illuminating, she finally said, her voice softer than he'd heard before. In 800 years, most beings I've encountered became predictable. You remain consistently surprising. She didn't withdraw her hand immediately, allowing the contact to linger in a way that acknowledged the evolving nature of their connection. When she finally did step away, it was with a grace that carried new meaning, not the cold formality of a progenitor queen, but the considered movement of someone recognizing significant personal change. Rest well, Naruto Uzumaki, she said from the doorway. Tomorrow we attempt to communicate with a god. After she departed, Naruto remained in the study, considering the magnitude of their undertaking. Establishing contact with the first progenitor, a being who had transcended conventional existence a millennium ago, represented perhaps the most significant diplomatic challenge imaginable. You realize she's developing feelings for you too, asterisk asterisk, Kurama observed, breaking into his thoughts. Is that even possible? Naruto wondered. After centuries of existence, can vampires still form new emotional connections? Immortality doesn't eliminate emotion. It just makes many immortals cautious about investing in temporary things, asterisk asterisk, Kurama replied with unusual insight. You're not temporary anymore. Your hybrid nature gives you potential longevity comparable to hers. The observation carried implications Naruto hadn't fully considered. His transformation had fundamentally altered his life expectancy. If he survived current events, he could potentially live for centuries rather than decades. The perspective shift was dizzying. One existential crisis at a time, he muttered, rising to seek the rest they'd need for tomorrow's challenges. As he passed through Krul's mansion toward his chambers, Naruto noticed subtle changes in how the vampire servants regarded him. Less as an unusual guest and more as a permanent fixture in their queen's household. Word of their activities had clearly spread through Sanguinum, establishing his position as Krul's partner in addressing the dimensional crisis. In his chambers, as he prepared for rest, Naruto felt the dimensional energy within him resonating more strongly than before, responding to the network they'd been activating throughout the day. Through this connection, He sensed something vast and ancient stirring in the space between worlds, awareness gradually focusing on the pathway being established between dimensions. The first progenitor was awakening from a millennium of isolation. Whether as savior, destroyer, or something beyond conventional understanding remained to be seen. Tomorrow they would begin to find out. Dawn brought renewed purpose. Naruto and Krul departed Sanguinum early, accompanied by Farid Badori, who carried ancient texts and specialized equipment for the ritual modifications. Final 3 fragments were located in significant positions around Tokyo, forming a triangle that would complete the summoning array. The first site was the ruins of the Imperial Palace, once the center of human government. The fragment pulsed more actively than those they'd secured previously, as if anticipating its role in the completion sequence. The resonance is stronger, Naruto observed as they approached. The network is becoming more synchronized. The veil between dimensions thins, Farid confirmed, his usual theatrical manner subdued by the gravity of their task. The first's cons. Seriousness presses against the boundaries. Using the combined knowledge of Uzumaki sealing techniques and vampire ritual practices, they modified the fragment, not moving it from its position, but altering its energy signature to function as a communication conduit rather than a manifestation point. Naruto's hybrid nature proved crucial, his unique combination of chakra and vampire blood creating eels that bridged the metaphysical gap between worlds. The modification is holding, he reported as they completed work on the first fragment. I can feel the network adjusting to accommodate the change. They proceeded to the second location, Tokyo Tower, once an iconic landmark now reduced to a skeletal framework of twisted metal. The fragment hovered at what had been the observation deck, pulsing in rhythm with the first they'd modified. As they ascended the damaged structure, Naruto sensed unexpected movement nearby. "We're not alone," he warned, extending his awareness outward. "Human soldiers, the Moon Demon Company. They're tracking the energy fluctuations," Krul surmised. "The network activation must be registering on their equipment. Should we engage?" Farid asked, seemingly eager despite the circumstances. "No," Naruto decided. "We complete the modification first. Confrontation only if necessary." They worked quickly, Naruto's shadow clones providing both assistance and perimeter security. The second fragment accepted the modifications with less resistance than the first, the network apparently adapting to their intentions. As they finished, the human presence grew closer. A squad of elite soldiers moving cautiously through the tower's lower levels. Their leader, recognizable as Lieutenant Colonel Ichinos from their previous encounter, directed his forces with hand signals. "They'll reach us before we can depart," Krul noted, her crimson eyes tracking the humans' movements through structural gaps in the floors below. "I'll speak with them," Naruto volunteered. "They know me from the Seraph incident. There might be room for understanding rather than conflict." "Diplomacy again," Farid remarked with raised eyebrows. "You were consistently optimistic about human rationality." "It's not optimism, it's pragmatism," Naruto countered. "Fighting delays our mission and potentially damages the fragments we're trying to stabilize." He moved to intercept the human quad before they reached the modified fragment, appearing in their path with hands raised in a non-threatening gesture. "Lieutenant Colonel Ichinos," he greeted the leader calmly. "I was hoping we might avoid unnecessary conflict today." The soldiers raised weapons instantly, but Ichinos signaled them to hold fire. "The hybrid," he acknowledged, studying Naruto with cautious interest. "Your energy signature has changed since our last encounter. I've been absorbing dimensional energy to help stabilize the rifts," Naruto explained truthfully. "That's what we're doing here, preventing catastrophic dimensional collapse that would threaten both humans and vampires." Ichinos' eyes narrowed skeptically. "Our readings indicate increasing activity in the dimensional network, not stabilization. You appear to be accelerating whatever process is underway." "We're modifying it, not stopping it," Naruto clarified. "The process was activated days ago when I first arrived through the original rift. It can't be halted without destroying both connected worlds, but it can be guided toward communication rather than manifestation." "Communication with what?" Ichinos demanded. "The first Progenitor, the original vampire who disappeared a millennium ago. He's attempting to return through the dimensional network. We're establishing controlled contact to assess his intentions before deciding whether to complete or terminate the process." The honesty of this explanation clearly surprised the human commander. He studied Naruto thoughtfully, calculating odds and implications. Why should we trust vampire intentions regarding their original progenitor? He finally asked. His return would logically strengthen their position against humanity. Not necessarily, Naruto replied. The first vanished a millennium ago. His perspective may have evolved during isolation. More importantly, uncontrolled manifestation threatens everyone equally, human and vampire. We're creating options rather than facing inevitable disaster. Ichinos conferred briefly with his officers, their whispered discussion just audible to Naruto's enhanced hearing. They were divided, some advocating immediate attack, others acknowledging the potential benefit of Naruto's approach. What do you propose? Ichinos finally asked. Allow us to complete the modifications to the dimensional network. Have your scientists monitor the process if you wish. Once we establish communication with the first, representatives from both humans and vampires can participate in the dialogue. It was a bold suggestion, one Krul and Farid might not approve. But Naruto sensed the importance of human inclusion in what was essentially a world-altering event. After further consideration, Ichinos nodded reluctantly. We'll allow you to proceed under observation. But at the first sign of deception or danger to human interests, we'll terminate the operation by any means necessary. Fair enough, Naruto agreed, relieved that diplomacy had prevailed. When he returned to Krul and Farid with the human contingent following at a careful distance, he expected resistance to his unilateral decision. To his surprise, Krul accepted the arrangement with practical grace. Including humans in the communication phase is logical, she acknowledged. If the first's return affects both species, both should have voice in the process. Farid seemed more amused than concerned by the development. How delightfully democratic, he commented. The first will certainly find this collaborative approach unexpected. They departed Tokyo Tower with the human squad following at a respectful distance, monitoring equipment recording the modified fragments' energy patterns. The final location awaited, the center of what had once been Shibuya Crossing. Once the busiest intersection in Tokyo, now a crumbled plaza reclaimed by nature. The third fragment pulsed with greater intensity than the previous two, its violet light visible even in daylight. As they approached, Naruto sensed the dimensional energy within him responding powerfully to its presence, like the final piece of a complex puzzle about to be connected. This one is different, he observed, studying the fragment with enhanced perception. It's not just a node in the network, it's the focal point where the first would actually manifest. The keystone, Farid confirmed. The cations to this fragment are most crucial. Too restrictive, and communication fails entirely. Too permissive, and full manifestation occurs prematurely. Working with extraordinary precision, they began the final modifications. Naruto's hybrid sealing techniques created a dimensional buffer, a controlled space where communication could occur without physical manifestation. Krul provided progenitor, blood to anchor the vampire aspects of the ritual, while Farid incorporated elements from the first's original transcendence experiment. The human observers maintained their distance, equipment recording every aspect of the process. Additional vampire nobles had arrived as well, drawn by the increasing dimensional energy and rumors of the first's potential return. The gathering had transformed a technical operation into something approaching a historical event, representatives of both species witnessing what might be a turning point in their world's existence. As the final modifications neared completion, the dimensional network responded dramatically. All fragments throughout Tokyo pulsed in synchronized rhythm, violet light connecting them in visible energy streams that formed the complete array pattern across the ruined city. It's working, Naruto confirmed, feeling the network stabilize into the communication configuration they'd designed. The pathway is forming, but contained as planned. Manifestation remains blocked pending deliberate activation. Krul stepped forward, her expression solemn as she addressed the gathered witnesses, both vampire and human. We now attempt communication with the first progenitor, who has existed in dimensional limbo for a millennium. What follows may determine the future of this world. Observe, but do not interfere unless absolute necessity demands it. At the center of the modified array, the air itself began to ripple, not the violent distortion of an unstable rift, but a controlled thinning of dimensional boundaries. Violet light, coalesced into a translucent sphere approximately 3 meters in diameter, within which shadowy movement could be perceived. Dimensional window activated, Naruto announced, maintaining the ceiling configuration with careful precision. Communication may now be attempted. Krul approached the sphere, her small form dwarfed by the manifestation yet carrying the authority of millennia. First Progenitor, she called. Her voice formal yet clear. I, Krul Tepes, third Progenitor of the Vampire Nation, seek audience. Your pathway has been prepared as designed, but controlled for safety of all realms concerned. For several tense moments, nothing happened. Then the shadows within the sphere coalesced, forming a humanoid silhouette of indistinct features but unmistakable presence. When it spoke, the voice seemed to bypass conventional sound, registering directly in the minds of all present. Krul Tepes, asterisk, the entity acknowledged, its mental voice carrying complex harmonics that suggested multiple simultaneous thoughts. You have grown powerful since our last meeting. And, interesting companions you keep now. Its attention shifted perceptibly toward Naruto, the full weight of NT consciousness focusing with uncomfortable intensity. Hybrid, dimensional traveler, catalyst. You carry energies from multiple realities within your transformed being. I am Naruto Uzumaki, he replied, maintaining his concentration on the ceiling configuration despite the disorienting sensation of direct mental communication. I arrived through a dimensional rift accidentally, but now seek to prevent catastrophic collapse between worlds. Noble intention, asterisk, the first observed, though whether with approval or amusement was impossible to determine. Yet you participate in the completion of my return pathway. Curious priorities. We seek understanding before action, Krul explained. Your return affects multiple species across connected dimensions. We have modified the pathway to allow communication before manifestation. The shadowy figure within the sphere shifted, its form becoming marginally more defined, suggesting a tall, elegant being with long hair, though details remained obscured by dimensional distortion. Caution. Wisdom. Not traits I recall as prominent in vampire leadership. Its attention expanded to include the gathered observers. Humans and vampires together, witnessing interdimensional communion. Fascinating evolution during my absence. Farid stepped forward, bowing with elaborate respect. Great first, your design has functioned as intended across a millennium. The pathway awaits only your command to complete manifestation. Farid Bhattori, asterisk, the first acknowledged. Still seeking advantage in cosmic events beyond your comprehension. Some patterns persist across eons, it seems. The entity's focus returned to Naruto. You are the unexpected variable. Your world's energy, chakra, you call it, resonates with dimensional frequencies in ways I theorized but never confirmed. Your hybrid transformation accelerated my return pathway by centuries. What are your intentions upon return? Naruto asked directly, deciding that diplomatic Chion served less purpose than clarity with an entity of such perception. The question prompted what might have been laughter from the first, a rippling distortion within the communication sphere. Direct, refreshing, my intentions, evolution, naturally, stagnation is anathema to true immortals. Evolution for whom? Krul pressed. Yourself alone, or this world's inhabitants? An insightful question, asterisk, the first replied. During a millennium of dimensional observation, I have witnessed countless civilizations rise and fall across multiple realities. Some through natural progression, others through catastrophic intervention. The pattern is consistent. Isolation breeds decay. It gestured within the sphere, and images appeared around its shadowy form, glimpses of other worlds, other species. Other civilizations in various stages of development. Your world has potential unrealized. Humans develop technological ingenuity but remain biologically fragile. Vampires possess biological transcendence but cultural calcification. Neither achieves true evolutionary progress alone. Lieutenant Colonel Ichino stepped forward from the human contingent, his scientific curiosity apparently overcoming military caution. You're suggesting some form of symbiosis between species. The observer comprehends, asterisk, the first acknowledged. Precisely. Not dominance of one over another, but selective integration of advantageous traits. My millennium in dimensional limbo has been spent studying evolutionary patterns across realities. My return brings this knowledge, the potential for guided Sentience rather than random mutation or stagnation. The implications were staggering. The first wasn't proposing conquest or destruction, but a fundamental reimagining of both vampire and human existence. Guided evolution based on interdimensional observations. And my world? Naruto asked. The chakra dimension. What role does it play in your design? The missing component. Asterisk, the first explained. Your world's energy manipulation principles. Chakra. Represents evolutionary development my world never achieved. The capacity to externalize and direct life force without biological consumption. Combined with vampire longevity and resilience, it creates possibility for unprecedented advancement. You want to merge the worlds, Naruto realized. Not physically merge, connect. Establish the passages between compatible dimensions, allowing controlled exchange of knowledge, energy, and eventually, beings. You yourself demonstrate the viability, hybrid existence incorporating strengths of multiple realities. The concept was revolutionary yet troubling. While not overtly malevolent, the first's vision involved fundamental alteration of multiple worlds without their explicit consent. Evolution guided by a single consciousness, regardless of how ancient or knowledgeable, carried inherent risks. Such connection would require careful implementation, Krul observed, her diplomatic experience evident in her measured response. Cultural and political considerations beyond mere technical possibility. Of course, asterisk, the first agreed. Forced evolution creates resistance and ultimately fails. Willing transcendence succeeds. Hence this communication before manifestation, understanding before action. The discussion continued for hours, representatives from both human and vampire factions asking questions, raising concerns, exploring possibilities. Throughout, the first remained articulate and seemingly candid, explaining aspects of dimensional theory and evolutionary principle. With clarity that suggested genuine desire for comprehension rather than mere compliance. As the communication session progressed, Naruto maintained the dimensional window with careful attention. Ut also observed the remarkable development occurring around him. Humans and vampires engaged in substantive dialogue, united by common interest in understanding a force that affected them equally. It was precisely the kind of cooperation he had suggested to Krul earlier, manifesting organically in response to shared circumstances. Eventually, practical considerations necessitated pause. Maintaining the dimensional window required significant energy, and even Naruto's enhanced reserves had limits. They agreed to continue communication the following day, allowing all parties to process information on and consult with their respective leaderships. As the dimensional window closed temporarily, the gathered representatives dispersed, humans to their stronghold in Shibuya, vampires to Sanguinum, carrying unprecedented information about potential futures for both species. Naruto, Krul, and Farid returned to Sanguinum to prepare reports for the Progenitor Council. The revelation of the first's survival and imminent return had profound implications for vampire society, particularly the hierarchy built around proximity to his original power. The council will be disturbed by these developments, Krul observed as they entered her mansion. A millennium of political structures potentially rendered obsolete by the first's actual return. Change often disturbs those who benefit most from existing arrangements, Naruto noted. Indeed, Farid agreed with unusual sincerity. The question becomes whether the first's vision of evolutionary transcendence outweighs the comfort of established order. In Krul's private study, they compared observations from the communication session. The first's proposal was neither as destructive as they had feared nor as benevolent as optimism might have suggested. It was complex, visionary, and carried both tremendous potential and significant risk. Do you believe his stated intentions? Krul asked Naruto directly. He considered the question carefully. I believe he was truthful about his evolutionary vision. Whether that vision benefits everyone equally or primarily serves his own transcendence remains unclear. Beings of such power often view others as instruments rather than partners. Similar to how the Progenitor Council views common vampires, or how vampires view humans, Krul observed with unexpected self-awareness. Hierarchical thinking persists across species and dimensional boundaries, apparently, Farid added. The Otsutsuki clan Naruto described from his world seems to share philosophical approach with our first, viewing other beings as resources for their advancement. which raises legitimate concerns about his true motives, Naruto concluded. Evolution guided by a single consciousness, no matter how advanced, risks becoming subjugation disguised as progress. The discussion continued late into the night, analyzing the first's proposal from multiple angles. Eventually Farad departed to communicate with his own network of informants, leaving Naruto and Krul alone in the study. A comfortable silence fell between them as they contemplated the day's extraordinary events. Krul moved to a window overlooking Sanguinum, her expression thoughtful as she observed the vampire city continuing its normal activities, unaware of the potential transformation looming in their future. In 8 centuries, she said quietly, I've witnessed technological revolutions, political upheavals, the rise and fall of human empires. Yet nothing approaches the magnitude of what we now face: dimensional connections, guided evolution. The return of the first after a millennium of absence. How does it feel? Naruto asked, joining her at the window. To witness something truly unprecedented after so many centuries of existence. She considered the question with genuine reflection. Unsettling, exhilarating, humbling, perhaps, to be reminded that even after centuries of accumulated knowledge, the universe contains mysteries beyond my comprehension. That feeling never goes away, Naruto said with a small smile. At least, it hasn't for me. Every time I think I understand how the world works, something new appears to challenge my assumptions. And you embrace this uncertainty? She asked, studying his expression with curiosity. I've learned to. Change is the only constant. Fighting it just causes suffering. Better adapt and find opportunity in new circumstances. Krul turned from the window to face him directly, her crimson eyes meeting his with unusual openness. Your perspective continues to fascinate me. Why? You face cosmic disruption with the same adaptability you showed when transformed into a hybrid being, acceptance followed by proactive engagement rather than resistance or despair. I've had practice, Naruto admitted. Growing up as a Jinchuriki, then facing increasingly impossible threats, the Akatsuki, Madara, Kagaya. Each time, the scale seemed beyond comprehension, yet somehow, we found a way forward. Krul repeated thoughtfully. You consistently frame challenges in terms of collective response rather than individual heroism. Because that's how the impossible becomes possible. No, one person can solve everything alone, not even the first progenitor with his millennium of dimensional knowledge. Their conversation paused as a servant entered with sustenance, blood for Krul, and specialized mixture Naruto had grown accustomed to since his transformation. When they were alone again, Krul continued their discussion from an unexpected angle. You mentioned returning to your world earlier, she noted, her tone carefully neutral. Is that still your intention after the current situation resolves? The question carried weight beyond simple curiosity. Naruto considered his response thoughtfully, aware of the developing complexity between them. Initially, yes, returning was my only goal, he answered honestly. But things have changed. The dimensional situation isn't as PLE is going through a door and closing it behind me. The first's proposal, while problematic in some aspects, suggests something I hadn't considered: ongoing connection rather than permanent separation. Connection between worlds, Krul clarified, or between individuals. The directness of her question surprised him, though perhaps it shouldn't have. 8 centuries of existence had likely eliminated any patience for conversational ambiguity. Both, Naruto admitted. I have responsibilities in my world, friends, commitments, a village that depends on me. But I've found unexpected connections here as well. Their eyes met, the unspoken understanding between them deepening. Krul moved closer, her usual regal distance diminishing. In centuries of existence, she said quietly, I've formed few genuine attachments. Vampire society discourages such connections. They're seen as vulnerabilities, distractions from power accumulation and political positioning. And now, Naruto asked, equally quiet, now I find myself reconsidering assumptions I've held for longer than most civilizations have existed. Her hand rose, hesitating briefly before touching his face with unexpected gentleness. Your arrival has catalyzed change in more than just dimensional barriers, Naruto Uzumaki. The moment hung between them, fragile yet profound. Naruto covered her hand with his own, accepting the connection being offered. Change can be frightening, he acknowledged. But also valuable, sometimes essential. Yes, she agreed, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm beginning to understand that. What might have developed further was interrupted by an urgent knock at the study door. They separated smoothly as Krul called permission to enter, her regal composure returning seamlessly. A vampire messenger bowed hastily. Forgive the interruption, my queen. The Progenitor Council has convened an emergency session. Your presence is required immediately, along with the hybrid. Has something happened? Krul demanded. Yes, my queen. The dimensional energy across the city has begun fluctuating unpredictably. And Lord Farid Badori has disappeared. The implications were immediately clear. Arid had taken independent action regarding the dimensional network, likely attempting to manipulate the process for his own purposes. Summon my guard, Krul ordered. We depart for the council chamber at once. As they hurried through Sanguinum toward the central keep, Naruto extended his senses, connecting with the dimensional energy he'd absorbed. The network was indeed fluctuating, the careful, established communication configuration destabilizing towards something closer to manifestation. Farid is accelerating the process, he reported grimly. Attempting to bypass our restrictions and enable full return rather than continued communication. His impatience outweighed his caution, Krul concluded. Typical. He never could resist accelerating games to their conclusion, regardless of collateral consequences. The council chamber was filled with agitated nobles when they arrived. All 13 progenitor thrones were occupied, a rare occurrence signifying the gravity of the situation. Gil's rose as they entered, his expression severe even by his stoic standards. Third Progenitor Tepes, he acknowledged. The dimensional network you modified has become unstable. Explain. Fair. Badori has apparently taken unauthorized action, Krul replied without hesitation. He was part of our team establishing controlled communication with the first, but appears to have modified the configuration toward full manifestation without consultation. Murmurs spread through the assembled nobles. Silenced them with a gesture. The first progenitor lives, he demanded, his composure ipping momentarily to reveal genuine shock. This was confirmed during your communication. Yes, Krul confirmed. He has existed in dimensional limbo for the millennium since his disappearance. The network we discovered was his design, a pathway for eventual return. The revelation sent ripples of reaction through the council. For a millennium, vampire society had functioned under the assumption that the first had permanently departed. His potential return represented fundamental disruption to established order. What were his stated intentions upon return? Lestkar asked, his youthful face belying the calculation behind his question. Evolutionary guidance, Krul answered carefully. He proposed establishing permanent connections between dimensions to facilitate controlled exchange of knowledge and abilities between worlds. And you believe this represents his true purpose? Pressed. His communication appeared candid, but verification was our precise reason for establishing controlled dialogue before considering full manifestation, Krul explained. Farid's interference has potentially compromised this cautious approach. Naruto stepped forward. The modified configuration is degrading rapidly. If we intend to restore the communication parameters rather than allowing uncontrolled manifestation, we must act immediately. The council exchanged glances, centuries of political maneuvering evident in their silent communication. Finally, spoke their collective decision. The controlled approach was prudent. Farid Badori's interference represents treason against vampire society. He turned to Naruto directly. Can you restore the communication configuration? Yes, but I'll need direct access to the primary fragment at Shibuya, Naruto replied. And time is critical. The degradation accelerates exponentially. You have the council's authority to take whatever actions necessary to restore control, declared formally. Third Progenitor Tepes will accompany you with appropriate forces. Locate and detain Farid Badori if possible, but the network stabilization takes priority. As they departed the council chamber with a contingent of elite vampire guards, Krul and Naruto exchanged concerned glances. The political authorization was valuable, but the technical challenge remained daunting, restoring complex dimensional configurations while countering Farid's deliberate sabotage. Why would Farid risk everything to accelerate the first's return? Naruto wondered as they moved swiftly toward Sanguinum's exit. He seemed genuinely concerned about uncontrolled manifestation earlier. Farid's motives are rarely transparent, Krul replied. He may believe he's negotiated some advantage with the first during private communication. Or he may be implementing a contingency plan we haven't anticipated. When they reached the surface, the dimensional disturbance was visible to the naked eye. Violet energy streams connecting the fragment locations pulsed erratically. Their steady rhythm replaced by chaotic fluctuations. The night sky above Tokyo rippled with aurora-like distortions where dimensional boundaries thinned dangerously. We need to hurry, Naruto urged, his senses detecting critical instability in the network. The primary fragment at Shibuya is the keystone. If we can reset it, the others should follow its configuration. They moved across the ruined city with preternatural speed, the vampire guards forming a protective perimeter around them. As they approached Shibuya, they encountered an unexpected development. Human forces had established a defensive position around the primary fragment, led by Lieutenant Colonel Ichinos. Rather than immediate confrontation, Ichinos approached under flag of truce when he recognized Naruto. Quote, "The dimensional network is destabilizing," he stated without preamble. "Our scientists detect imminent catastrophic failure. Farid Bottori has tampered with the configuration," Naruto explained quickly. "We're here to restore the communication parameters and prevent uncontrolled manifestation." Ichinos studied them with tactical assessment. "Our scientists reached the same conclusion. They've been attempting to stabilize the primary fragment, but lack the necessary understanding of its fundamental architecture. We need access immediately," Krul stated, her tone brooking no argument despite the diplomatic context. To his credit, Ichinos recognized the urgency transcended political considerations. "Granted, our forces will maintain perimeter security while you work." This unprecedented cooperation, vampire progenitor and human military working in coordinated response to common threat, might have seemed remarkable under normal circumstances. In the face of dimensional catastrophe, it felt like simple pragmatism. The primary fragment at Shibuya had transformed dramatically since their last visit. Now it hovered a meter above the ground, surrounded by a swirling vortex of violet RGY that periodically discharged lightning-like arcs into the surrounding area. The dimensional window they'd established for communication had expanded unstably, threatening to become a full manifestation portal. Farid modified the restriction seals, Naruto observed, analyzing the changes with his hybrid perception. Deliberately weakened the communication buffer while strengthening the manifestation components. Human scientists had established monitoring equipment around the fragment, recording energy fluctuations with increasingly alarmed expressions. They stepped aside as Naruto approached, recognizing his unique qualification to address the crisis. "I'll need to reset the entire configuration," he told Krul. "It's too destabilized for simple adjustment." "What do you require?" she asked, practical focus overriding any other concerns. "Stabilizing energy to counter the chaotic fluctuations. Your blood has the strongest connection to the first after Farid's tampering. It can serve as an anchor while I reconstruct the sealing array." Without hesitation, Krul bit into her wrist, offering progenitor blood for the procedure. Naruto accepted this sacrifice with appropriate gravity, understanding the significance of a progenitor voluntarily sharing blood for purposes other than transformation. Combining Krul's blood with his hybrid chakra, Naruto began reconstructing the Dimensional interface, carefully removing Farid's modifications while reinforcing the communication aspects of the configuration. The process required extraordinary precision, each adjustment potentially catastrophic if misaligned. As he worked, the dimensional disturbances intensified. The sky above Tokyo fractured with visible rifts, glimpses of other realities briefly visible through thinning barriers. From these fractures, familiar chakra signatures registered on Naruto's enhanced senses, his homeworld becoming increasingly connected as the boundaries weakened. "Someone's coming through, Kurama warned, detecting the approaching presence before it fully materialized. Multiple signatures, powerful ones. Before Naruto could respond, a rift opened directly above the primary fragment. Figures emerged, shinobi from his world, their arrival sending shockwaves through the already unstable dimensional field. "Naruto," a familiar voice called out as the first figure landed nearby, pure PLE Rinnegan eyes immediately assessing the situation with tactical precision. Sasuke, Naruto acknowledged, recognizing his oldest friend and rival. Bad timing. Sasuke Uchiha stood in the ruins of Shibuya, his black cloak billowing in the dimensional winds. Behind him, Shikamaru Nara and Sakura Haruno took defensive positions, clearly prepared for hostile reception in an unknown world. "We've been tracking dimensional disturbances for days," Sasuke explained quickly, taking in Naruto's transformed appearance with raised eyebrows but professional composure. "Konoha detected your chakra signature across dimensional boundaries. Rescue mission?" Naruto asked, not pausing in his work on the fragment configuration. Initially, Shikamaru confirmed, his sharp eyes noting the cooperation bet. "Wean vampires and humans with analytical interest. Now it seems more complicated." Sakura moved closer, her medical training immediately registering the changes in Naruto's physiology. "What happened to you? Your chakra signature is altered, and your physical parameters are." "Hybrid transformation," Naruto explained briefly. "Vampire shinobi fusion. Long story, no time now. The dimensional barriers are collapsing. I'm trying to stabilize them." The arrival of shinobi from Naruto's world created both complication and opportunity. The human and vampire forces regarded the newcomers with understandable wariness, but also recognition of potential allies against the dimensional threat. Krul approached the Konoha shinobi with diplomatic precision. "I am Krul Tepes, third progenitor of the vampire nation. Your arrival is unexpected but potentially valuable given current circumstances." Sasuke evaluated her with characteristic efficiency. "You're the source of the altered energy in Naruto's system. The vampire component." "Yes," she acknowledged without elaboration. "Currently, our priority is preventing dimensional collapse that would destroy both our worlds. Assistance would be welcome if offered." The pragmatic exchange established immediate if tentative alliance. Sasuke turned to Naruto, recognizing the complexity of the sealing work he was attempting. "You're using modified Uzumaki techniques," he observed. "Combined with something else. Vampire blood rituals." "Exactly," Naruto confirmed. "I need to restore communication parameters while preventing full manifestation." The D-dimensional network was designed by this world's first progenitor. He's attempting return from millennium-long dimensional isolation. Sasuke processed this information with characteristic efficiency. Sakura, stabilize the dimensional tear our arrival created. Shikamaru, analyze the energy pattern and identify structural weaknesses. I'll assist Naruto directly. The Konoha shinobi deployed with practiced coordination, their arrival shifting the dynamic from crisis management to potentially effective intervention. Sakura's precise chakra control allowed her to mend the rift their arrival had created, while Shikamaru's strategic analysis quickly identified critical nodes in the dimensional network. With Sasuke's assistance, his Rinnegan providing unique insight into dimensional mechanics, Naruto made rapid progress restoring the communication configuration. The combined approach of shinobi techniques and vampire blood rituals created a more stable interface than either could have achieved alone. As they worked, a new presence made itself known. Farid Badori appeared at the edge of the operational area, observing with his customary amused expression despite the chaos surrounding him. "Reinforcements from another dimension," he commented, nodding toward the Konoha shinobi. "How resourceful you continue to be, Naruto Uzumaki." Krul moved with progenitor speed, appearing before Farid with deadly intent. "Your tampering endangered both worlds. Explain yourself before I separate your head from your shoulders." Farid raised his hands in mock surrender. "A simple misunderstanding, my queen. I merely adjusted the parameters to facilitate more direct communication. The destabilization was an unfortunate side effect rather than intended outcome." "You're lying," Sasuke stated flatly. Is Rinnegan seeing through deception with uncanny precision? "You deliberately sabotaged the configuration to force full manifestation." "Another one with troublesome eyes," Farid sighed dramatically. "Yes, very well. I accelerated the process because delay serves no purpose. The first will return regardless of our preparations. Better to embrace the inevitable than postpone it with half measures. At the risk of dimensional collapse," Naruto demanded, not pausing in his stabilization work. "Calculated risk," Farid replied smoothly. "The first assured me privately that manifestation would proceed safely under his guidance. Our communication protocols were unnecessarily restrictive. Before further confrontation could develop, the primary fragment pulsed with renewed intensity. The dimensional window Naruto was reconstructing expanded suddenly, the shadowy figure of the first appearing with greater definition than before. The catalyst brings allies from the chakra dimension, the first observed. His mental voice registering with all present. Fascinating development. Dimensional boundaries thin enough for direct crossing without specialized preparation. First Progenitor, Krul addressed the manifesting entity formally. Your return pathway has been compromised by unauthorized modification. We are attempting to restore stable communication parameters. Farad's impatience. The first acknowledged with what might have been amusement. Characteristic but unnecessary. My return proceeds according to design, regardless of specific configuration details. This statement confirmed what Naruto had begun to suspect. The first had been manipulating events from the beginning, using Farad's predictable interference as simply another aspect of his overall design. You expected this, Naruto realized. Addressing the first directly, the communication phase, Farad's sabotage, even our restoration efforts, all anticipated components in your return strategy. Perceptive, the first confirmed. A millennium of dimensional observation provides perspective on probability patterns. Multiple approaches converging toward inevitable outcome. And what outcome is that? Sasuke demanded, his Rinnegan studying the first's manifestation with analytical intensity. Convergence, the first replied. Not merely my return, but the beginning of interdimensional synthesis. Your presence, Uchiha Sasuke, accelerates the process. Rinnegan energy interacting with vampire blood ritual creates resonance patterns I could not have engineered directly. The implications were staggering. The first hadn't simply been waiting for rescue or planning conventional return, he had been orchestrating a complex interdimensional event using multiple participants as unwitting components. The prophecies, Krul realized. The dimensional traveler, the golden crimson warrior, you planted those concepts centuries ago, knowing they would eventually manifest. Probability manipulation rather than precise prophecy. The first clarified, establishing conceptual frameworks that would eventually attract corresponding manifestations. Your hybrid transformation was one possible outcome among many, but ideally suited once it occurred. As they spoke, the dimensional disturbances intensified. The network of fragments throughout Tokyo pulsed in accelerating rhythm, violet energy stream. Connecting them visible even from Shibuya. The sky continued to fracture, revealing glimpses of other realities, including recognizable landscapes from the shinobi world. Whatever your design, Naruto stated firmly, uncontrolled dimensional collapse threatens both worlds. We need to stabilize the boundaries before proceeding with any convergence you have planned. Agreed, the first surprisingly concurred. Chaos serves no evolutionary purpose. Structured integration requires stable frameworks. With unexpected cooperation, the first provided guidance from within the dimensional window. Directing energy flows to counter the destabilization Farad's tampering had caused. Following this guidance, combined with Naruto and Sasuke's sealing techniques and Krul's blood rituals, the dimensional network gradually stabilized, not returning to its original configuration, but establishing a new equilibrium that maintained separation while allowing controlled interaction. As stability returned, the immediate crisis passed. The fractured sky above Tokyo healed, dimensional boundaries reinforcing while maintaining the established connections. The primary fragment at Shibuya continued to serve as a communication portal, but now with enhanced definition that allowed clearer interaction with the first. With the acute danger addressed, attention returned to the fundamental question, what exactly did the first's convergence entail, and what would his full return mean for both connected worlds? Convergence does not mean conquest, the first stated, apparently sensing their concerns. It means controlled integration of complementary elements across realities. Vampire resilience, human adaptability, shinobi energy manipulation, combined rather than competing. Under whose authority? Sasuke asked directly, cutting to the core issue. Guided evolution requires a guiding intelligence. You propose yourself for this role. Initially, yes, the first acknowledged without pretense. My millennium of dimensional observation provides necessary perspective. But sustainable integration requires distributed governance, representatives from all affected realities participating in evolutionary direction. It was a more moderate position than might have been expected from an entity of such power and age. Whether this represented genuine philosophical evolution during isolation, or tactical concession remained unclear. The immediate crisis resolved, the gathered representatives, vampire, human, and shinobi, established a formal diplomatic framework to continue dialogue with T. He first while evaluating the implications of interdimensional connection. The primary fragment at Shibuya was secured as a permanent communication portal, with joint forces from all factions providing security and monitoring. As dawn approached, the various contingents withdrew to their respective territories, humans to Shibuya Stronghold, vampires to Sanguinum, the Konoha shinobi accompanying Naruto and Krul to continue information exchange in more private settings. In Krul's mansion, the reunion between Naruto and his friends from Konoha took on more personal dimensions now that the immediate crisis had passed. So, Sakura said, studying his transformed appearance with medical curiosity, vampire shinobi hybrid. That's a new one even for you, Naruto. Not exactly planned, he admitted with a rueful smile. I was dying after coming through the rift. Krul saved me with her blood. The interaction with Kurama's chakra created something unexpected. Troublesome as always, Shikamaru commented. Though with obvious relief at finding his friend alive. Konoha has been in an uproar since you disappeared. When dimensional disturbances started appearing throughout the land of fire, we connected them to your last known location. How is everyone? Naruto asked, genuine concern for his home village evident. Worried about you, Sakura replied. But managing. Kakashi has coordinated the response to the dimensional phenomena with typical efficiency. As they exchanged information, Sasuke maintained thoughtful observation of Krul, his analytical mind assessing the vampire progenitor with characteristically direct scrutiny. Your blood changed him fundamentally, he finally stated. Not just physically but energetically. The transformation is permanent. Yes, Krul confirmed without apology. Progenitor transformation cannot be reversed. Though his case is unprecedented, the interaction with tailed beast chakra created hybrid traits no vampire has ever exhibited. And your interest in him? Sasuke pressed, his directness challenging vampire diplomatic protocols, scientific curiosity, political advantage, or something more personal. The question might have provoked offense from a being of lesser self-possession. Krul met Sasuke's penetrating gaze with equal directness. Initially scientific and strategic, she acknowledged. Now more complex. 8 centuries of existence. CE rarely presents genuine novelty or challenge to established perspective. Naruto Uzumaki has provided both. Sasuke accepted this answer with a slight nod, apparently satisfied with its honesty if not its specifics. He has that effect on people, he conceded. Even gods and demons, apparently. Now vampires as well. Their conversation shifted to more practical matters, establishing protocols for interdimensional communication. Sharing information about respective worlds, and developing preliminary framework for managing the first's proposed convergence, with appropriate safeguards for all involved civilizations. As discussions continued, Naruto found opportunity to speak privately with Sasuke, stepping onto a balcony overlooking Sanguinum while the others continued information exchange inside. You're not planning to return with us, Sasuke observed without preamble, his perception as sharp as ever. Naruto sighed, leaning against the balcony rail. It's complicated. The dimensional situation isn't resolved, just temporarily stabilized. My hybrid nature connects me to both worlds now. And there's the vampire queen, Sasuke finished for him. I recognize that look, Naruto. I've seen it in the mirror on occasion. Is it that obvious? To someone who knows you as well as I do, yes. Sasuke's usually stoic expression softened marginally. Your heart was always too big for one village. Perhaps it's fitting it now spans dimensions. I haven't forgotten my responsibilities to Konoha, Naruto insisted. With stable dimensional passages, I could potentially maintain connections to both worlds. The diplomatic solution, Sasuke noted with a hint of amusement. Always your preference. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, two friends whose bond had transcended death, war, and now dimensional boundaries. Finally, Sasuke spoke again, his tone unusually gentle. Whatever you decide, you have my support. And Konohas, your contributions have earned you the right to choose your own path. Even if it leads beyond our world. Thank you, Naruto replied, genuinely moved by this understanding. That means more than you know. When they rejoined the others, practical planning continued well into the day. The Konoha shinobi would return to their world carrying information about dimensional developments and proposals for formal diplomatic exchange. Stable, e-communication channels would be established using modified versions of the techniques that had stabilized the primary fragment. As evening approached, the visitors prepared to depart through the controlled dimensional passage they'd established. Before leaving, Sakura embraced Naruto tightly. Don't be a stranger, she instructed, her medical training having already accepted the reality of his transformation. Dimensional boundaries are not, you're still part of our family. I know, he assured her. This isn't goodbye, just a new chapter. Shikamaru offered a more restrained farewell, though the sentiment behind it was equally genuine. Try not to cause interdimensional incidents without warning us first, he suggested dryly. Paperwork is troublesome enough without cosmic complications. Sasuke's departure was characteristically understated, a simple clasping of hands that conveyed understanding transcending words. His Rinnegan met Naruto's hybrid eyes with perfect comprehension of the unique path his friend now walked. After they departed, Naruto and Krul returned to her study to prepare their report for the Progenitor Council. The day's developments, from crisis to stabilization, to diplomatic framework, represented fundamental change for both their worlds. Your friends accepted your transformation with remarkable ease, Krul observed as they organized information for presentation. They've seen me change before, Naruto replied with a small smile. From outcast to hero, from enemy of Kurama to his partner. This is just another evolution on a long journey, and their acceptance of your divided loyalties. They understand that bridges between worlds benefit everyone. Isolation breeds stagnation, as the first observed, though perhaps not in the way he intended. Krul studied him thoughtfully, something uncharacteristically vulnerable in her expression. And what of your personal path forward? Between worlds, between responsibilities, between connections. The question addressed what had been developing between them, a bond transcending initial scientific curiosity or strategic alliance. In the crucible of dimensional crisis and shared purpose, something deeper had formed, mutual respect evolving into genuine attachment. I've never been good at choosing between important connections, Naruto admitted. I tend to find ways to maintain them all, even when conventional wisdom says it's impossible. The diplomatic solution again, she noted, echoing Sasuke's earlier observation. It's served me well so far. He moved closer, the distance between them diminishing both physically and metaphorically. 8 centuries is a long time to maintain barriers around yourself, Krul Tepes. And 22 years is very little time to comprehend what breaking those barriers might mean. She countered, though without rejection in her tone. True, he acknowledged, but I've always been a quick study. The moment between them deepened, centuries of careful stance yielding to connection that transcended conventional categories, neither fully vampire nor human, neither purely professional nor simply emotional, but something unique to their extraordinary circumstances. Whatever convergence the first envisions between worlds, Naruto said softly, I think we've discovered our own version already. Perhaps we have, Krul agreed, her usual regal composure giving way to genuine warmth. An unexpected outcome from dimensional chaos. The best kind, Naruto replied with a smile that bridged worlds and ages, connecting an ancient vampire queen with a shinobi who had never accepted limitations as final. Outside, the stabilized dimensional network pulsed with renewed harmony across Tokyo, violet light connecting fragments in patterns that suggested no ending but beginning, the first threads of connection between realities that had developed in isolation for millennia. Whatever challenges the first's return might eventually bring, whatever convergence might ultimately mean for their connected worlds, the foundation had been laid for cooperation rather than conflict. And at the center of this cosmic transformation stood an unprecedented partner. Our ship, Vampire Progenitor and Shinobi Jinchuriki, ancient wisdom and indomitable spirit, blood and chakra merging to create something neither world had imagined possible before dimensional boundaries thinned enough for new possibilities to emerge. Chapter 2 End.